A hypothetical question is posed by a serene, angelic figure to a young man. What if he were transported to another world and given a second chance at life? However, this grand scenario is merely the opening for a sound-only broadcast where an unseen streamer's voice captivates a growing audience. Because of this, picking up streaming as a hobby is not recommended. By night, a young man with dark hair and a red headband sits before his microphone, broadcasting to his listeners. By day, he is just a boy, sleeping soundly in his bed. Life takes place at the prestigious Sistal Royal Academy in the Rogius Kingdom. After classes, he walks past a fellow student bidding him farewell and returns to the solitude of his dorm room. The moment the door closes, his calm demeanor shatters, replaced by a look of intense strain as he prepares for another broadcast. Back into his persona with ease, leaning into the microphone with a wide grin. He greets his audience enthusiastically, thanking them for tuning in and asking how their day was. He is the streamer, and his show has begun. Then announces the start of the chat/advice segment. The first letter is from a man named Akita, a B-rank adventurer. The streamer's expression becomes serious and focused as he listens to the man's problem. Akita recounts how a new member joined his adventuring party, but his only skills were supportive magic, scouting for enemies and repairing weapons. Believing this to be useless, Akita, as the party's leader, kicked the young man out, leaving him to cower in dismay. After processing the story, the streamer's face breaks into a cold, condescending smile. He leans closer to the microphone and asks Akita a single sharp question. "Are you stupid?" Immediately elaborates on the foolishness of this decision. Scouting magic helps avoid dangerous monsters, and repair magic saves the party from having to go to a repair shop, an incredibly handy skill. As he speaks, his listeners flood the chat, calling Akita a horrible leader and questioning his arrogant tone. His voice rises with intensity as he delivers his verdict. He declares that he doesn't care about Akuta's status. The adventurer's judgment is flawed. He admonishes Akita, asking if he intends to wait until his entire party is dead before realizing his mistake. If he can't make the right call, he should just resign. Akita is left stunned and speechless by the verbal onslaught. The streamer's audience of 10,000 listeners reacts with fervor. They praise his refreshing if harsh take. The consensus is clear, summed up by one listener's comment. Akita should get on his knees and beg for that support user to come back. He decides to move on to the next letter, uncertain if his previous advice had any effect, but preferring to avoid any potential trouble. The new message is from the son of an upper-class family, who explains that he is already engaged. The letter continues, revealing that the sender has fallen for a new transfer student and is considering choosing her instead. The message concludes with a shocking and selfish demand for the streamer to die, so the sender can marry the new girl, leaving Kanata utterly appalled. This outrageous sentiment causes an uproar among his diverse audience. In one home, a family listens in disbelief, shouting in outrage and questioning if the writer has any thought for his own family. Even royalty is incensed. A king, seated on his throne and flanked by guards, declares that this is not a matter to be dismissed lightly. The condemnation is universal, crossing racial boundaries. A group of demonic beings chimes in, advising the letter writer to first earn his fiancé's trust and to stop judging people solely on their appearance. Watching the stream, Rebecca's expression twists with jealousy. While a chat message mocks the streamer, she imagines herself confronting him, shouting that she wants a girlfriend too, and calling him a dumbass, much to the confusion of Akita beside her. His broadcast finish for the day, Kanata leans back with a sigh of relief and signs off, telling his audience he'll see them tomorrow. He holds a small device, wondering if this is how streamers felt in his previous life, admitting to himself that it was quite fun. As he sits in his room, the identity of the anonymous streamer is made clear. His real name is Kanata, and in this world, he's a transfer student. The next day at school, an instructor lectures the students. He explains that magic is fundamentally about imagination, demonstrating his point by conjuring a small, crystalline magical construct at his fingertips. Listening to the lecture among his classmates, Kanata reflects on his circumstances. He realizes that it has been some time since he was reincarnated into this world. He reflected on his past excitement upon discovering magic. In this new world, it had initially seemed wondrous, but now, surrounded by others who could also wield it, the novelty had faded. It was nothing special anymore. Kanata had quickly realized the potential of his power and, seeking to understand it, took the magic ranking exam. He obtained a prestigious rank S and enrolled in the Royal Academy, a school for the richest nobles and most powerful commoners. However, his presence drew the attention of a flamboyant, blonde-haired student who believed himself to possess unlimited power. Attention was not positive. Two other students cornered him, their expressions filled with disdain. One sneered that he wasn't welcome, citing his lack of family name, while the other bluntly told the plebe to beat it. His observation was stark and immediate. The nobles clearly did not like commoners. He understood that no matter how hard one tried, changing one's social status was nearly impossible in their eyes. He decided to handle the situation with disarming politeness for the time being, clasping his hands together with a serene smile. He told them he wouldn't know the answer to their unspoken grievances and suggested it would be best to ask the teacher. The direct yet passive response left his bullies seething in frustration. The tense standoff was broken by the hurried arrival of a young woman, Maria Adorashisu, who ran onto the field, apologizing for being late. The blonde prince began to scold her, but Kanata interjected, telling the prince that if he had time to talk, he had time to perform. The prince glared back, incensed by the interruption. Ignoring the conflict, Maria turned to the teacher, thanking him for his kindness. The instructor waved off her apology, reassuring her that it was fine and no one was blaming her. He correctly guessed she had been busy helping around the house. Prince's attention shifted upon hearing the teacher mention Kanata's rank as achievement. With a confident smirk, he stepped forward, brushing back his hair and declaring that he would take the turn instead, striding past a nonplus Kanata. He took his position before the practice targets, confirming with the teacher that he simply needed to aim fire magic at the target and that a fireproof seal was in place. He gave it his all. With a shout of fire, he unleashed a powerful blast of magic. After the prince's spell struck the target dead center, the teacher announced that they could allow one more person. He called out, "Today is Kanata's turn. Go ahead." With the prince and his cronies watching smugly, Kanata stepped forward, arms crossed, ready to show his own capabilities. Unleashes his power, and a colossal explosion erupts from the target, obliterating it completely. The sheer force of the blast stuns the onlookers. Their face is a mixture of shock and disbelief. Maria gasps, her eyes wide. Kanata himself seems taken aback, muttering that he might have overdone it. The dust settles, revealing the aftermath of his display. The teacher, holding what little remains of the target, addresses the class with a smile, praising the splendid show of power they just witnessed. He then dismisses them for individual training, but the other students slump over their motivation completely gone. As Kanata walks away from the training grounds, the prince watches him go, his face contorted in disbelief and rage. He seeps, unable to accept that a mere commoner could possess such strength. His fury is interrupted by Maria's approach. She demands to know what the prince and his two companions are doing. One of them, trembling with indignation, loudly accuses Kanata of obviously cheating. Her expression instantly hardens at the accusation. A cold, intense glare silences the two nobles who recoil in surprise at the sudden address from Lady Maria. With a sharp crack, she drives her fist into a nearby stone pillar, shattering the rock. She warns them to stop letting their foolish pride get in the way, stating that this has nothing to do with social status. She explains that there's a certain quality possessed by people like him, a quality that allowed them to pass the exam. Meanwhile, as Kanata stands alone, another student approaches him. A young woman with elven ears calls out, startling him. She tells him his magic was amazing and that she was impressed. Kanata can only offer a quiet thank you in response. In the background, the prince and his followers bow respectfully to the elf girl, addressing her as Your Highness. She smiles warmly at his response, formally introducing herself. She confirms that she is indeed Lady Maria, a member of the royal family and also the youngest of the three princesses. She then begins to explain that he must be wondering why conflicts keep arising around social status. Kanata, however, is overwhelmed by the stares of the other students, internally wishing they could just get this over with quickly. He tries to dismiss her, saying it's nothing, but she runs a few paces ahead and turns back to him. She insists that he should hear what a certain mister has to say about the matter, her expression becoming serious. She winks, pointing a finger at Kanata as she offers a final piece of advice. He shouldn't go around provoking people, even if he's angry. With a knowing smile, she asks if he understands. Later that evening, under a starry sky, the prince stews in silent frustration, leaning against the tree. Nearby, Kanata looks up at the night, signed to himself that the others were the ones who started the confrontation. His thoughts on the day's events lead him to his new project. Seated before multi-monitor setup, he begins his broadcast, greeting his viewers as streamer. He asks how their day at work or school was, remarking that his equipment reminds him of a work terminal he acquired after enrolling here. He continues, explaining to his audience that he had to do a great deal of tinkering to upgrade the basic terminal into a proper personal computer. Was no simple modification. To create a platform akin to a streaming site, Kanata had utilized his limitless power. While this world possessed a network that linked terminals, access to technology and entertainment for the general populace was virtually non-existent until now. During his stream, he reflects on the awful events of the day, limiting that the arguments about status between nobles and commoners seem to be a never-ending cycle. He notes that if anyone else were to attempt streaming, their magical power will be depleted in a matter of minutes. Suddenly, a special, colored message appears in his chat feed from a user named Anonymous Princess, expressing her happiness at hearing his voice again. The unique format of the message causes a stir among the other viewers who recognize it as a sign of a hardcore fan. The message is more than just a comment. It's a formal letter of gratitude that also contains a donation. As Kanata reads it, wondering what it is, an image of the human princess, Maria Atarashisu, appears, her hands clasped as if in prayer. Following the message, a notification confirms the transfer of 10 gold coins, the sound of the currency clinking as it is deposited. Kanata stares, momentarily stunned by the generosity. A wide, heartfelt smile spreads across his face as he cups his hands to his mouth, shouting his gratitude to the mysterious princess. He stares at the coin, his mind racing. The donation was massive, equivalent to 100,000 yen from his past life. He worries aloud, asking his benefactor if they're stealing from their parents, concerned about the source of such a large sum while the chat buzzes with speculation. He continues the conversation with his mysterious benefactor. She boldly offers herself as a candidate to be his lover, an offer he gently deflects. He reassures her that he isn't meeting anyone in public, and that his identity is safe. The princess thanks him, expressing hope that they might find a chance to meet in the future. Meanwhile, in her own chambers, Princess Maria Adorashisu lies on her bed, unable to contain her feelings. She admits to herself that she couldn't help it. She has fallen for him completely. Every new facet of his personality she discovers only deepens her affection. A blush spreads across her face as she clutches her chest, overwhelmed by the intensity of her emotions. With a sigh, she rolls about on her bed before reaching once more for the device that connected him. Gazing at the screen, she reflects on how truly strange he is. He appeared from nowhere, like a comet, and instantly began captivating people with his charisma and influence. In her mind, she sees him as a guiding figure, one who has already saved so many people through his kind words and insightful guidance. She admires his clear objective and his unwavering opinions, but most of all, his boldness, his willingness to face any and all backlash head-on. Holding the device to her ear, she shivers. It feels as if his voice is seeped directly in her mind, as if every inch of her very being has been marked by him. This profound connection solidifies her resolve. She realizes she doesn't want to merely offer financial support. She wants to devote herself to him completely. Devotion solidified into a singular, overwhelming purpose. With hearts in her eyes and a look of pure ecstasy, she declared her new reason for being. She wanted to live for him. As has been noted, the streamer had already amassed a large following in Atarashia, but she was not alone. From this point forward, more and more people with similarly terrifying feelings would continue to appear across the land, individuals consumed by the same intense fervor. This growing obsession formed a powerful catalyst, with Princess Maria at its very heart. She and others like her, their faces alight with fanatical devotion, gathered in spirit, all focused on the object of their fixation. Yet the one who had inspired such passion, Kanata, remained completely unaware of the forces coalescing around it. His ignorance, however, would not last. A major incident was brewing on the horizon, an event that would inevitably cause him to meet these very fans, with many looking forward to the next live stream. In this world, the reincarnated Kanata conceals his limitless power, continuing his activities as the sole streamer from another world. Even while enduring harsh treatment at his school, his secret life provides a steady income, with another 10 gold coins chiming in on his device. Streaming has attracted a particular kind of audience, one overflowing with obsessive listeners. Chief among them, Yandere Princess, who has declared she will sustain his living. Deciding to avoid the crowds, Kanata strolls casually down a less traveled path on his way back from the academy. His hands lay behind his head as he approaches a grand estate. Thoughts drift to an earlier incident in the library. Rebecca had noted that things have become more of a pain since the explosion magic incident. Nearby, the prince and his associate had scoffed, questioning how a commoner could get good grades and dismissing it as a fluke. She then recalls a more recent spectacle. The prince had cornered the elf girl, Maria, loudly proclaiming his love for her from the bottom of his heart. Kanata, who had been planning to stream to lift his spirits, could only watch the scene unfold. He remembers thinking he couldn't possibly pass through, wondering if the prince was the third princess's fiancé. But Maria had gently turned the prince down, apologizing and explaining that her heart was already destined for someone else. She clarified that it wasn't a matter of fate. She was allowed to find her own love, and there was already someone she wanted to give herself to. A small robotic avatar representing his viewers gave a silent thumbs up in approval. The rejection sent the prince running away in tears, shouting for her to be happy and not to worry about it. Returning to the present, Kanata leans against a wall in sighs, musing on how lucky Maria's partner must be. He admits to himself that she is certainly his type and elegant beauty. Unbeknownst to him, Maria is just around the corner, having heard everything and deeming his eavesdropping to be the lowest of the low. She steps out, startling him. Kanata throws his hands up defensively, apologizing and claiming this is his way home. With a sharp gaze, Maria informs him that his shadow was visible the entire time. She quickly dismisses the situation, laughing and assuring Kanata that it was just a joke. Visibly flustered, he stammers out his thanks and begins to hurry away. As he departs, she pauses, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. The accent she'd just heard felt familiar, though she wonders if it was merely her imagination. Later, in the privacy of her room, her attention is fixed on screen. Kanata, in his streamer persona, energetically greets his audience. With a look of pure excitement, she exclaims his name, revealing she had been eagerly waiting for his broadcast to begin. Akim signals a donation, and she is overcome with bliss, melting at the sound of his voice and declaring her love. A moment later, she snaps back to reality, surprised by the large sums of money being sent. She expresses concern for the other donors, suggesting they should prioritize themselves lest she feel guilty for the system she implements. Demeanor shifts to one of fear's determination. She declares that she is the one who provides for the streamer and that she must now focus on the day's first letter, on the stream. Kanata reads a viewer's question aloud, pondering if living peacefully with demons is truly so bad, as conflict only leads to more suffering. He admits that he doesn't fully grasp the issue, acknowledging the common knowledge that demons are a race to be opposed. His words spark a flurry of reactions from his audience. Some accuse him of betraying humanity, while others note he has expressed similar sentiments before. The idea of good demons is raised, but it is clearly a taboo subject. While listening intently, Maria recalls that he had said something like this before, drawing a parallel between the prejudice against demons and the discrimination faced by slaves. A memory surfaces of townspeople discussing the supposed savageness of another group. The memory jolts her back to the present, inside her moving carriage. Her eyes widen in shock at something she sees outside. She urgently commands her attendant Seabass to stop at once. Searing out from the carriage, she is confronted by a horrific sight, a slave auction in progress. Caged individuals cry out in despair. One begs not to be looked at, while another, a young girl, pleads with a well-dressed lady, asking if she is her new master and promising to do anything to avoid being with her. She stands frozen before the horrific scene, her attendant Seabass confirming her fears. It is indeed a slave market. He assumes her knowledge comes only from her studies and suggests they move on, but she questions him, her voice trembling, asking if slavery isn't a relic of the past, in response to her desperate plea to do something. Seabass can only admit his own powerlessness. He explains that powerful nobles and ministers still partake in the trade behind closed doors, making any legal reform nearly impossible. As Maria clenches her fist in frustration, he adds that he has heard of someone who offers guidance to those who have lost their way. Expression hardens with resolve. She holds up her communication device, a familiar icon glowing on its screen, and realizes who Seabass must be referring to, the streamer. If she is truly serious about this, she concludes, then asking him for help might be her only option. The desperation of the enslaved is palpable. A man trapped in a cage wonders aloud if anyone can truly find a solution to their plight. With a firm click, Maria begins composing her message, her focus entirely on the task ahead. Meanwhile, Kanata is in the middle of a stream when a message catches his eye. It's from the nameless princess, and her request is staggering. She wants to abolish the slave market. He expresses his shock that slavery even exists in this country, a sentiment that earns him mockery from other viewers. The princess's message continues, declaring that robbing people of their right to live freely is the ultimate evil. He continues speaking directly to the princess, his voice emanating from her device. He challenges her, suggesting that if she truly holds the status of princess, she should be the one to try and change the law, even while admitting that dealing with old regulations would be a difficult task. His words act as a catalyst. A fire ignites in her eyes as she declares her intention to go to her father, the king. As Seabass reels in shock, the streamer's voice offers a final piece of encouragement. Her actions could save countless lives and bring hope to the enslaved. Filled with newfound purpose, she commands Seabass to prepare the carriage at once. This decision sparked a revolution. Maria spearheaded a movement that swept the nation, ultimately leading to the complete eradication of slavery and the establishment of strict enforcement to prevent its return. In a vision of the future, a blindfolded Maria stands under the moonlight, vowing to forever follow and believe in the person who showed her the path forward. Therefore, she now stands at the academy, applying the same conviction to a new problem. She declares that discrimination is a threat to peace and proclaims her intent to act as a mediator between the commoners and the nobles. Just then, a notification chimes from her device. She glances at the screen, only to find the comments have devolved into a petty argument, with users bickering over who is most deserving of being with the streamer. The stark contrast between her grand ambitions and this trivial squabble leaves her utterly stunned and speechless. Her bewilderment quickly curdles into fury. She demands to know what the others are talking about, calling them trash. With manic intensity, she declares herself the most suitable person for the streamer, punctuating her claim with a flurry of donations. Declaration is met with a hesitant response from the streamer himself. He admits he's flattered by the sentiment, but clarifies that he dislikes people who quarrel in public for all to see. Labeling such behavior is a nuisance. His words strike her with the force of a physical blow. Tears well up in her eyes and stream down her face as a devastating realization dawns on her. The streamer hates her actions, and by extension, he must hate her. She quickly recovers from her despair, her expression hardening with new resolve. She declares that she understands and will do her best, vowing to get along with the others for his sake. As she makes this promise, The streamer muses aloud that getting along with demons is also important, idly wondering what the demon king is like. His casual remark sends a shockwave through his audience. The reaction is immediate and overwhelming. His viewers, a diverse crowd of faces filled with panic and anger, erupt in a unified plea, begging him not to speak of such a topic. He remains completely oblivious to the uproar he has caused, having touched upon a great taboo of this world. Leaning back in his chair, he simply wonders if he will ever see a world where humans and demons can live together in peace. Elsewhere, the prince watches the stream, a smirk on his face. He finds the streamer's audacity interesting and results to start thinking more progressively himself. A powerful horned woman holds up a hand, dismissing a group of terrified adventurers cowering before her. She declares them boring and not worth the effort to kill, commanding them to return only when they have grown stronger. This confrontation took place sometime before Kanata's more controversial broadcasts. Venturer Akita, defeated on the ground, recognizes a swirling vortex of energy as a war portal. The horned woman taunts the humans, questioning if they could ever hope to fight against the power they would classify as SSS class. Aggression softens into contemplation as she clutches a pendant at her chest. She silently wonders why they must continue to fight for centuries on end, questioning if this is truly the right choice for her people. Doubt passes. As she walks through a grand hall, two of her demonic subordinates gaze at her with reverence. One of them calls her Lady Shrausa, remarking that she is as strong and beautiful as ever. Continues on, musing that there is little point in questioning what has long been established as common sense. One of her attendants points out that the adventurers dropped something interesting. On the ground lies a small device with a cracked screen, displaying the face of a streamer. Lady Shrausa wonders who in the world this person could be. Later, a different subordinate, a bespectacled demoness named Kikiki, explains the device's function. She notes that while they don't have his signal in their current location, it is said to be popular to listen to him. Holding the device, Shrausa considers that it might be useful for gathering information. Having reached a decision, she turns to Kikiki in a small, floating familiar. She gives a direct order: go and make something that will allow them to receive this signal. Kikiki eagerly accepts the command. Sometime after, Shrausa sits intently before a newly constructed computer terminal. Kikiki and the familiar stand by, watching her anxiously as the subordinate asks for her assessment. She suddenly stands from her chair with a sharp sound, startling another attendant. Shrausa declares that this endeavor will, at the very least, help her kill sometime. She leans in close to the screen, her focus absolute. The streamer asks his audience what they ate today, casually mentioning he had egg toast. Shrausa, who reveals she had meat for breakfast, is visibly stunned by the sheer mundanity of the conversation. She slumped over her desk, a blush, a frustration on her face. She chided herself for even considering sending a message, convinced the streamer would never respond to someone like her. Despite her internal conflict, watching his broadcasts had become a comforting daily routine. She recalled her initial assessment of him as someone merely killing time, a perception that was rapidly changing. As she sipped from her cup, she pondered his true nature. She recognized the immense magical power required to broadcast one's voice across all directions and came to a startling conclusion. He was a human possessing more mana than even she, the demon lord. This realization made his next words resonate with shocking force. The streamer questioned the very reason for the conflict between humans and demons, declaring that war was meaningless as it only served to increase the death count. The sentiment struck Shrausa so profoundly that her cups slipped from a grasp. Her attendant, noticing her stunned expression, quietly asked if she shared the streamer's opinion. He continued, clarifying that it was just his personal opinion, but he felt that if their leaders would stop focusing on fighting, they could begin peace talks instead. Shrausa listened, utterly captivated. A faint, amused smile touched her lips as she covered her mouth, thinking him a fool. Yet in that moment, a profound shift occurred. From then on, Shrausa began to see him as a comrade. Her deep thoughts were then immediately derailed by a more pressing matter: what to have for dinner. Her newfound sense of kinship prompted her to action. She sent a massive donation, startling the streamer with its size. He expressed his gratitude but urged the anonymous supporter to prioritize their own well-being. Unseen, Straussa simply resolved to become his personal wallet, reveled in her secret patronage, laughing with manic glee. Her delight was cut short. However, when a notification announced another large donation, this time from the nameless princess, Shroud's joy instantly curdled into fury. When a subordinate cautiously asked if something was wrong, she snapped back that there absolutely was. Her possessive fixation was beginning to mirror that of a certain other princess. Her anger was momentarily forgotten as the streamer mused aloud, wondering what the demon lord looked like, and asking his audience if they wanted to find out. He then seemed to pose a question directly to her. "You want to see me?" The directness of it caught Shrewdza completely off guard, and she peeked out from behind a column, flustered. But she scrambled back to her terminal, typing a furious reply. On screen, Kanata noticed the new comment, reading her message, which playfully accused him of mimicking the demon lord, and eagerly accepted a meetup. Immediately after, another message popped up, noting that the streamer was interesting and that they, too, would try to think more positively. Her voice echoed from within her private chambers, calling for aid. She announced that she had an urgent matter to attend to and required immediate assistance. A matter, however, was a deeply personal obsession. While bathing, her thoughts were consumed by the streamer. She reflected on her status as the demon lord, a ruler of many, yet found herself completely fixated on this faceless child of humanity. Her desire was singular and absolute. She wanted it. She mused that if it were him, she would even be fine letting him rule over her body. As her fantasy deepened, her subordinate Kiki entered, politely interrupting to state that it was time for a lady's departure. The Kiki, noticing her dazed state, asked if she was feeling dizzy. The demon lord deflected, claiming the water was unusually hot, but her subordinate countered that it was the same temperature as always. Her mind, however, remained lost in desire. She desperately wished to meet the streamer, to see his face, to touch him with her own hands, and to hold him in her arms. She wondered what she must do to make such a wish come true. Her resolve hardened as she focused on her goal. She knew he resided in the human realm, and with a determined gaze, she vowed to offer everything she possessed as a demon lord to get to him. With her decision made, she took flight, a winged silhouette launching from the spires of her dark castle, questioning if you would, in turn, grant her everything she wished for. Journey began not with a streamer, but with a show of force. She materialized before a terrified human king, a predatory grin spreading across her face as she announced it was time to begin. Meanwhile, far from the machinations of demons and kings, Kanata began to stir in his bed, stretching as he slowly woke to his seemingly normal morning. His quiet awakening was shattered by Zeus, who burst in complaining about the noise outside. He urgently shouted for everyone to look at the news. In a bustling castle town, the news spreads like wildfire. Citizens gather in the streets, clutching newspapers that declare a ceasefire. The demons, it is reported, have sent a non-aggression request. The public is abuzz, connecting this sudden peace to the recent broadcast. One person asks if the demon lord was listening to the streamer, while another wonders about the sheer influence of this mysterious figure. Rumors circulate that every country now considers him a person of great importance. The newspaper itself depicts the human king kneeling, having lost his nerve and agreed to the terms, a testament to the overwhelming event. Far from the political upheaval he has caused, Kanata sits by a window, looking out with a placid expression, completely unaware that his fame and influence are skyrocketing. He idly wonders if there will be a festival. In these moments, it becomes clear that a single word from the streamer now has the power to change the world. Having finally completed his task, Kanata stretches, wiping sweat from his brow with a wrench still in hand. Announcing that he's starving, he decides to eat outside and promises to explain everything to his audience later. He steps out into a bustling town square, the sounds of a lively populace filling the air between the timber frame buildings. Strolling through the crowd, he takes a large bite of some skewered food, marveling at how great it tastes. He amuses that spending days outside isn't so bad, but his thought is cut short as he is suddenly splattered with sauce, prompting him to shout in annoyance at whoever spilled it. The commotion comes from a burly man with a shaved head aggressively confronting a woman in a hooded cloak. He yells at her to watch where she's going, pointing at the stain on his shirt and demanding she make it up to him. The woman apologizes meekly, but Kanata, watching from a distance, recognizes the situation as a classic scam. He observes that the scammer's tactics are particularly low and notes the absence of any soldiers nearby. He wonders with a sigh if this world is somehow testing him, pushing him to get involved. He considers that while dealing with such things as a pain, doing nothing would be worse. Steeling himself, he calls out to the thug, addressing him as old man. Kanata steps forward, calmly stating that the woman only bumped into him and questioning the man's extreme reaction. The thug turns his attention to Kanata, aggressively asking what he wants. With a confident smirk, Kanata cracks his knuckles and tells the man to let the woman go. In a flash, he seizes the thug's arm, effortlessly twisting it. The man cries out in shock, stunned that someone with such thin, stick-like arms could possess such power. Panicked, he quickly makes an excuse about being late for work and flees the scene, with the man gone. Kanata turns to the hooded woman, muttering that the scammer could have at least apologized. The woman looks up at him, her face still obscured by her hood, and asks what's wrong. She pulls back her hood, revealing a delicate face with large, light-toned eyes. She explains that his voice simply sounded familiar. Kanata is taken aback, wondering if she could be one of his listeners. The thought of a romance with such a cute girl crosses his mind, but he quickly dismisses it as a misunderstanding. She stands flustered, admitting that she could have chased the man away herself, but might have injured him in the process. Kanata urges her to go home before anything else happens, telling her it's all right. Internally, he reflects that he's this secretly strong type, leaving the girl to wonder what he means. Following his advice, she formally thanks the stranger whose name she does not know. Kanata brushes it off, saying that helping a pretty girl has lifted his spirits. She demurs, suggesting there are many people prettier than her. He scratches his head, thinking to himself that if she isn't considered pretty, the standards in this world are terrifyingly high. Her gaze then falls upon his hand, and she points, asking what happened to it. Canada looks down, surprised by her sudden concern. He quickly explains that it's just a bruise from cleaning up the day before, reassuring her that it will likely be fine by tomorrow. A brief memory shows him clumsily dropping stack of books. In response, she gently touches his cheek, telling him to be careful. She remarks that he's a nice person, unlike the boys from her academy, leaving Kanata momentarily stunned by her touch. She pulls back, flustered, asking if his earlier actions counted as sexual assault. She calmly reassures him that it's fine. The conversation shifts as he asks if she thought he was younger than her. She admits she thought they were the same age, revealing that she just turned 17 this year, though she's a bit short. Kanata, surprised, confirms they are indeed the same age and apologizes. To prove her point about not being a child, she puffs out her chest assertively. She tells him not to worry, as she's used to this sort of thing and her body has grown up just fine. Canada stares, wide-eyed and speechless. She continues with a smug expression, adding that she can handle situations perfectly well. The display is too much for Kanata, who recoils in embarrassment, covering his face and thinking to himself what a peculiar personality she has. With their strange encounter concluded, they part ways in the street. She bids him farewell, hoping they can meet again if chance allows. He waves back, reminding her to be mindful of her surroundings. As he walks away, he ponders the interaction. He recalls seeing a cross on her attire and wonders if she was his sister in training, but ultimately decides it doesn't really matter. Within a grand summit hall, a woman in a sister's habit addresses a hooded figure. She begins to offer a welcome, but trails off, suggesting circumstances prevent a simple greeting. In the distance, having just arrived, Maria Adarashisu ascends a wide staircase. Now face to face with Maria, the sister expresses her concern, having heard that the saintess was involved in a scammer's fraudulent scheme. She insists that such a thing never would have happened if more people were aware of Maria's true identity. Maria listens, her expression unreadable and severe. The sister continues her lament, finding the situation painful given that Maria's presence is irreplaceable to the kingdom, serving as a key figure in negotiations with other nations. In response, Maria simply turns and walks away, a silent dismissal of the other woman's worries. Startled by her coldness, the sister calls out to the saintess, remarking on her merciful nature. Maria pauses, clasping her hands piously. She reminds the sister of their doctrine. All humans are equal, and one must remember to despise the sin, not the person. Later, alone in a vast chamber, she reflects on the day's events. She recalls that there was a good encounter amidst the bad, a kind gentleman. She realizes their voices felt strangely alike, a similarity that made her hesitate between belief and disbelief. Her contemplation ends with a furtive glance to ensure she's truly alone. Her entire demeanor shifts. A nervous tension fills her as she pulls out a small communication device, which beeps as it activates. In an instant, her composure shatters. She leaps up with a cry of pure ecstasy, knocking over furniture in her explosive joy. The streamer's divine voice is here. It is revealed that this revered saintess is also a deeply obsessive listener, her adoration for the voice bordering on a slight insanity. Outside the church building under the night sky, the sister reflects on the saintess's amazing and constant calm. She remains completely unaware of the truth within where Maria arrives, overwhelmed by the streamer's lovely voice. This is her secret ritual. Every day, she purifies her body, preparing herself to be ready to offer everything to him at a moment's notice. The person known to the world for her unwavering calm is in private, consumed by a fervent, almost religious devotion to the streamer. She collapses on her bed, trembling with pleasure, her lower abdomen clenching just from the sound of his voice. As she loses herself in the moment, another young woman with glasses enters the room, looking on with deep concern at the scene before her. She continued to watch the stream, her attention fixed on the small device. On the screen, Kanata proudly presented his hands, no longer hidden from view. "Tata, I can show off my hands now," he announced, asking his audience, "You guys watching?" Maria could only let out a confused sound in response. The sight of his hands sent a jolt through her. A horrifying realization dawned, her face paling as she stared at the screen. Could it be him? No, it couldn't be. The thought echoed in her mind, a frantic denial against the mounting evidence, the architecture visible behind him, the very buildings she knew so well. He had, without knowing, revealed his location. During his stream, Kanata proudly presents a new magic item he finished that morning, a camera specifically for showing his hands. He positions his fingers over the device, asking his audience if they can see them clearly. He checks the feed on a separate device, noting that the quality is quite good. He explains to his viewers that the bruise on his hand hasn't healed yet, which is why he still needs to wear a bandage. Briefly considers that he should have worn gloves to keep his identity hidden, but then dismisses the thought with a laugh. He confidently declares that there's no way anyone could identify him, just from his hands. There. Two of his viewers react with alarm. Lady Shrusa, holding a first aid kit, asks what happened to his hands. Princess Maria stares at her screen, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief as she recognizes them. She trembles, thinking it can't possibly be him, unaware of their specific reactions. Canada reads the flood of concerned comments from a general audience. He reassures them, explaining that he was just a klutz that morning, and warns them to be careful around bookshelves. He realizes that simply showing his hands has caused quite a stir. 2 hours later, he remarks that the stream is more fun because of his audience's energy. As he prepares to move on, a notification pings on his screen and his expression darkens with confusion and annoyance. Notification is a video message, which he realizes is a threat. A burly man with a scar introduces himself as Mantis, the leader of the Thief Guild. Mantis states that he doesn't understand streaming, but finds it intensely annoying and that it makes his skin crawl. The message continues with several of Manas's shadowy subordinates who collectively promise that they will find the streamer and kill him in a painful manner. After the final taunt to spend his last days shaking in bed, Kanata grins defiantly into his camera and retorts, "Right back at you." He internally concludes that the thugs are just envious and hate his very existence. Meanwhile, as a cascade of donations pours in for Kanata, Maria enshrows a watch with frustration. Maria voices her confusion, unable to understand the hatred directed at him when he earns so much money simply by streaming anonymously. But she considered the man's threat from the stream, under the light of a stormy sky. She reflected that threatening people was a serious offense, one that could easily lead to imprisonment. This line of thought led her to ponder two key questions the thief had clearly overlooked. What truly happens when one threatens to kill a streamer, even as a bluff? And just how much power do his devoted followers actually possess? Hours later, the consequences began to unfold. In a desolate, rocky hideout, the members of the Thief Guild lay scattered and defeated amongst their broken weapons. The carnage, a single figure fled into the night. Mantis, the guild's leader, gasped for breath as he scrambled away from the bodies of his fallen comrades. His frantic escape was cut short as he cursed his luck. He couldn't understand how they had found him, but before him stood a line of armored soldiers, and among them, the very streamer he had threatened. The sight drove him into a rage. He blamed the streamer for his humiliating retreat, screaming defiance as he brought his fists down, shattering the communication device that had started all. Outburst was met with swift retribution. An unseen force sent him flying, and he cried out in pain as he hit the ground. A new figure appeared, calmly observing his fall and remarking that she hadn't expected a mantis to be so weak. The figure was Maria, now clad in the robes of a holy sister, a cross clutched in her hands. She chided the man on the ground for making things more difficult. Beside her stood the adventurer Akita, who dryly asked if she could avoid causing him so much trouble. Unseen by the humans, another pair watched from distance. A powerful winged demon cursed his luck, remarking that he would have avoided the area entirely if he'd known humans would arrive first. Lady Shrausa stood beside him, her expression unreadable. Pinned to the ground and utterly defeated, Mantis could only stare up in terror at the foot on his back, demanding to know who his mysterious assailants were. The forces that I descended upon him were a strange and terrifying coalition, all united under one banner: believers of the streamer, a horned demon lord, a serene woman of the cloth, and a stern elf princess, all delivered the same verdict. Judgment must be passed. Their subordinates, a powerful warrior, a cheerful woman, and a stoic swordsman, were ready to carry out the sentence. Death. Among them, two figures stood over the terrified thief. The woman, dressed as a nun, declared that they were passing an emergency judgment. Her companion, the swordsman Akita, seething with rage, questioning how such a hopeless fool could even dare to think of killing their tardy. Defeated and broken on the ground, the thief could only watch as the two demons who had been observing from a distance flew away. He realized with dawning horror that they, too, were believers, less zealous than their superiors, perhaps, but still part of the same insane flock. From his vantage point, this outcome was both self-earned and deeply unfortunate. It served as a stark, painful example of just how terrifying the online world could be. A few days later at the academy, the prince read a newspaper article with a smirk. The official story reported that the royal knights had successfully hunted down the notorious thief, Mantis. He remarked on their impressive work. He was not the only one to hear the name. Seated at his desk nearby, Kanata's focus was broken by the mention of Mantis, a name that felt vaguely familiar. As he pondered, another student approached his desk, was distracted by the other student's distress. The boy clutched his head, lamenting that recently even the other commoner students had been ignoring him. Kanata noticed the boy had dropped a handkerchief and tried to call out to him, but the student walked away, lost in his own misery. The brief interaction did little to lift his own spirits. Kanata slumped over his desk, hating his lonely student life and wondering if he had overdone it that one time. In the background, other students chattered, mentioning that the teachers were in an important meeting. His melancholy was interrupted by the classroom door sliding open. A teacher entered, instructing everyone to take their seats. From his desk, another student glanced over at Kanata, noting how lifeless he appeared. The teacher stood before the class and made an announcement. Though it was sudden, he explained that a certain person would be joining their class temporarily. The news sent a wave of excited murmurs through the room, but Kanata could only look on with a weary, troubled expression. As Kanata sat stunned by the teacher's announcement, the subject of the discussion made her way down to school corridor. However, this was no ordinary transfer student. She was a person of the utmost importance to the capital, one who held a close relationship with the royal family. Until this moment, she had never revealed her face in public, but she had decided to make an appearance for the sake of her own future. Back in the classroom, the prince issued a stern warning to the students, telling them not to try anything rude. With a sharp gesture, he then permitted the newcomer to enter, a development that left Kanata utterly bewildered. The girl stepped into the room and greeted the class. She introduced herself as Alfana, explaining that despite her youth, she held the position of saintess. The revelation sent a shockwave through the classroom, leaving Canada and his peers speechless as the new student gave a playful wing. At the academy, Canada rests his chin on his hand, contemplating the news. He correctly surmises that rumors of the saintess transferring into the S-class are spreading like wildfire, with other students already rushing off in excitement to catch a glimpse of her. His prediction proves true as the classroom erupts into chaos. A large crowd of students swarms Alfana's desk, calling out to her and marveling at her beauty. From his seat, Kanata watches the scene unfold with a knowing look, having anticipated this exact reaction. One of the female students manages to get Alfana's attention, asking why a saintess would transfer to this particular academy. Alfana gives a playful wink and touches a finger to her chin, thoughtfully replying that it is for something akin to societal observation. She then amends her statement, adding that she has another true goal in mind. Canada overhears this, his expression turning serious as he considers her words. His mind drifts to what little he knows about the title of saintess, recalling time spent in a library, poring over books to learn everything he could about this new world. He remembers the texts explaining that a saintess is a rare individual chosen only once every few decades, a person possessing immense mana and a worthy personality. This figure holds authority over the entire church, excels in diplomacy, and maintains a close relationship with the royal family. Alfana herself confirms this, mentioning she is friends with Princess Maria. The pieces click into place for Kanata. He realizes that the girl he ran into before was this very transfer student. He muses that, given her power, she would actually be a better fit for the SSS class, not just the S class. He grimaces, recalling their first encounter and how he treated a simple, lost civilian. A wave of relieved sweat breaks out on his face as he thanks his lucky stars that she forgave him for his earlier behavior. As Alfana sits at her desk, a confident young man approaches. He introduces himself as Zickert of the Londauer House, a student from the SSS class, noting that Princess Maria is absent on official business. He offers to guide Lady Alfana around the school in her stead. Alfana seems taken aback, offering a hesitant greeting. Her hesitation vanishes in an instant. With a cold, dismissive expression, she questions his audacity and calling her by her name without permission. While acknowledging his offer, she flatly refuses, leaving Zickert utterly stunned and speechless. Her cold dismissal leaves the high-ranking student, Zickert, utterly humiliated. He bows his head, offering a profuse apology as other students, including Kanata, watch the scene unfold. Some murmur that it's what he gets for being so cocky, while another calls the display pathetic. As Zickert shuffles away in defeat, Kanata hardens his expression. He has no time to laugh at the spectacle, as the next class is scheduled to be held outside. He decides he will use the travel time to look for topics to discuss on his next stream. Outside, during the practical magic lesson, Alfana demonstrates her power. With a focused cry, she unleashes a powerful water slash, sending a crescent of fluid energy hurtling towards the practice target. The attack slices cleanly through the target, leaving the other students gaping in awe. They remark that such power is expected of the saintess, with some wondering why someone of her level, perhaps even greater than Princess Maria's, is in the S-class. One student declares he must make her like him, watches her contemplating the difficult life of nobles. They're constantly forced to engage in people-pleasing and forge connections for their families, never truly able to focus on themselves. His thoughts are interrupted when the instructor calls out his name. The teacher directs Kanata to go to the starting point for his turn, and Kanata acknowledges with a simple gotcha. As he walks past the line of students, Alphana steps close to him. She leans in and whispers a quiet message of encouragement directly to him. Please do your best, good sir. Her unexpected proximity and personal encouragement send a jolt of shock through Kanata. He freezes his mouth agape as she calmly turns and walks away. He remains stunned for a moment, processing what just happened. He can't believe she not only noticed him, but also spoke to him. As he stands there flustered, Alphana continues on her way, hiding a small, satisfied smile. The brief interaction ignites a fire within him, now filled with a powerful new motivation. Kanata strides confidently toward the starting point, determined to show off. Zeus observes his friend's sudden change in demeanor, remarking that being so motivated is a good thing. He takes a stance, determined not to overdo it like last time. Focusing his energy, he unleashes a water slash, a controlled jet of water that slices cleanly through the air toward its target. The blast strikes the target dead center. The teacher, observing from the side, nods in approval, murmuring, "Nice shot." However, not everyone is impressed. Zickert and his companions watch with disdain. One dismisses the display as the same old trick, while Zickert scoffs, questioning what a filthy peasant thinks he's doing and calling him as annoying as ever. Kanata hears their jeers, but resolves to ignore them, remaining unbothered. Their words, however, do not go unnoticed. A cold, sharp voice suddenly rings out, demanding to know who just uttered the words, "filthy peasant." Voice belongs to the elf princess, her expression radiating cold fury. Kanata looks on, startled, as she declares her disbelief. She had heard from Maria about such behavior, but had dismissed it as a joke, shocked to find that nobles who insult peasants actually exist within the academy walls. Her intense aura immediately silences Zickert's group. They recognize that the magic they've just witnessed is nothing like their own brute strength. It was refined and perfectly controlled. Horrifying skeletal figure materializes behind the elf princess as she commands them to learn some shame. The teacher marvels at her incredible magic, which, in untrained, I might mistake for a mere apparition. The princess continues her lecture, declaring it unforgivable to ignore one's own weakness while insulting the talented, regardless of who they are. She makes it clear that nobility grants them no special privilege. The sheer pressure of her words and magic sends the arrogant students to their knees. Kanata, bewildered by the scene, wonders if he somehow angered them further. Zeus clarifies the situation, explaining that the group is now being lectured by both the princess and the saintess, all because of their insults toward Kanata. As the commotion settles, he realizes with a hint of disappointment that in the end, he didn't get a chance to speak with the saintess again. He spots her from a distance, sitting peacefully with the elf princess under a parasol. He quickly shakes off the feeling, a wide grin spreading across his face. He decides it doesn't matter. He has his listeners, and that's enough for him. With renewed enthusiasm, he throws his arms up, already pondering what he should talk about during his stream that night. He sits alone on a bench, addressing his unseen audience. He apologizes for the delay and enthusiastically declares that they will be streaming until morning. As he speaks, the figure of the elf princess, who had been standing beside him, turns and walks away with a quiet step. Solitary meal is interrupted by an unexpected reunion. He looks up in astonishment to see Alphana standing before him, blurting out her title. "Saintess," Alphana smiles, but her eyes are sharp as she notes that he seems to have had a prior guest. The realization dawns on Kanata, his face contorting in shock as he understands she saw who had just left. Kanata had been exploring the school grounds when his path led him to an ornate structure. There, he spotted the girl known as the saintess, Alphana, standing alone. He watched her for a moment, a small, thoughtful sound escaping her lips. His quiet observation was cut short as she suddenly turned and grabbed him by the lapel, her expression intense. She announced their reunion, addressing him formally as good sir, leaving Kanata completely flustered. She pressed on, asking if he remembered her as the girl he met in town. Her initial, fiercely blushing expression softened into a more direct, questioning gaze. Confirmed that he remembered her, Alfana immediately insisted that he stop being so cautious and speak to her casually, as they had when they first met, warning that she wouldn't forgive him if he refused. Internally, Kanata panicked, realizing that being seen alone with her could be disastrous. To avoid trouble, he quickly agreed to speak normally, and she beamed with gratitude, quickly scanned their surroundings, relieved to find no one else nearby. Alfana then made another request, for him to call her Alfana, and for her to call him Kanata. He was taken aback, recalling that she hadn't seemed to like it when he used her name before, but she pressed her hands together, earnestly wishing for him to call her by her name. She sat down on a nearby structure, explaining that since fate had brought them together again, he should grant her this one wish, punctuating her plea with a charming, one-eyed way. Hesitated, repeating her name aloud as if testing the weight of it. Clenching his fist in indecision before crossing his arms, he finally, reluctantly, gave in. His agreement sent a jolt through Alfana. She squirmed with delight. Her face flushed as she shyly whispered his name back to him. Watching her reaction, Kanata conceded to himself that while her behavior was strange, she was undeniably adorable, possessing both a nice personality and physique. Her elation was so profound that her spirit seemed to momentarily leave her body in a state of pure bliss. The simple act of him calling her by name was enough to send her soaring. Kanata could only watch, thinking to himself that she was almost too perfect. Internal world, however, was a storm of misinterpretation. She reasoned that just as love is blind, those obsessed in fate, even the smallest of gestures. For Kanata, not to notice her desires was normal. Therefore, his agreement to use her name was, in her mind, a clear agreement to marry her. Unaware of this monumental leap in logic, Kanata simply noted that she looked sleepy and told her to get up. The next day dawned over the Grand Academy building. Inside, Kanata entered his classroom wondering where to sit. He immediately spotted Alfana, who had arrived early and was already surrounded by other students. At the same moment, the elf princess also walked in, greeting Alfana cheerfully. He froze in the doorway as Alfana announced she would be intruding. His shock was mirrored by his classmates, who stared in disbelief. His astonishment grew as the elf princess, Maria, strode directly toward Alfana, demanding to know why she was there and not in the SSS class. As Maria called her a person full of surprises, Alfana could only offer a flustered apology. The other students were overwhelmed by the sight, calling the scene too bright for them. Kanata, too, could only think of them as a pair of idols. She watched as Alfana, looking away shyly, tried to explain her presence to Maria. She claimed it was nothing important, just that she wanted to experience what student life was like. Their conversation was nearly lost amidst the fawning of the other students, who felt blessed by their divine presence but found it difficult to approach them. He continued to observe them, realizing they were completely used to being the center of attention. It seemed normal for them, yet they also projected an aura of disinterest in everything happening around them. His classmates whispered that the two would surely react if someone talked to them, but another counter that their expressions seemed fake, like a cold smile. Thought resonated with Kanata. He recalled Alfana's friendly smile from the day before and Princess Maria's warning. Re-evaluating these memories, he imagined them looking down on him with disdain, wondering if they lacked basic manners. He was left to question if his initial impressions were all just his imagination. Watch is as Alfana and Maria combers nearby. Alfana muses about taking a class or two, admitting that she's jealous of how much fun the other students seem to be having. Kanata overhears, but quickly dismisses his own feelings of envy, telling himself to know his place and that he's thinking too much. A sight makes him feel profoundly lonely, wishing he could be like them. Steeling his resolve, he decides he can make a friend or two. He turns to a nearby student, Zickert, and with a bright smile, attempt to start a conversation by asking what he had for dinner. Zickert glares back, venomously telling him to get lost. The brutal rejection is a crushing blow. Kanata slumps onto his desk, utterly defeated, wondering just how much everyone in this place hates him. From his seat, Zickert scoffs, thinking that Kanata is getting carried away just because he's skilled with magic. He decides to just take a nap, figuring he can ask his online listeners for consolation later. As he rests his head on his desk, Alfana and Maria approach. Alfana senses something is wrong, but Maria dismisses it as nothing. Alfana's gaze, however, sharpens with concern. At that same moment, far away in the Xandrid Empire, events were unfolding within a certain noble mansion. Inside a lavish room, a young attendant stands before a small girl. Between them rests a large table, completely covered by a mountain of glittering jewels. Elsewhere, a man with a prominent scar across his face addresses a figure clad in black and wearing a bird-like mask. He informs the operative, whom he calls Crow, that an ante has appeared and that they have a mission. Crow accepts, clenching a gloved fist as a device in their other hand cracks under the pressure. A man with a prominent scar over his eye smirks, advising his associate to be patient. But the associate, a figure cloaked in black and hidden behind a plague doctor's mask, is all business. With arms crossed, the assassin known as Crow demands to know his target. Same echoes in Kanata's mind as he looks out over the school grounds. Krill. He rests his head on his desk in a classroom as Alfana and Maria discuss the very same topic. Alfana remarks that it's hard to believe someone like Crow actually exists, and Maria confirms she heard about it too, adding that he apparently showed up in Mithras just the other day. Friends' conversation continues. They note that Mithras is only 100 kilometers away, a proximity that is slightly unsettling. Still, they reason that they've done nothing to deserve being targeted and will probably be fine. Kanata, meanwhile, reflects on his good fortune, thankful to have been born into a clean, uninvolved family. He recalls a crucial piece of local knowledge. In this world, the word crows doesn't refer to birds but to assassins. Mind drifts to the research he'd done. Even the information from his listeners was spotty. They all thought Crow was just an urban legend. The online comments were a mix of rumor and speculation, claims of killing more than 30 people, whispers of nobility, and doubts about his very existence. But Kanata now suspected he was real. Shaking off the unease, he decides the matter has nothing to do with him. He rests his head on his arms, content to sleep until the next lesson. Elsewhere, in a well-appointed room, Crow confronts a stout, aristocratic man. The assassin cuts him off, stating that his time is valuable and demanding the target's name. The man expresses surprise, noting that no one would expect a living legend from the Xandrid Empire to appear here. Incensed by the assassin's dismissive tone, the man bellows in anger and lunges forward to strike him. But in a flash, Crow vanishes from spot, leaving the man's punch to meet only empty air. The man whirls around in shock, finding Crow now standing silently behind him. The assassin warns that he won't repeat himself. Terrified, the man immediately capitulates. He reveals the target's name is Streamer, a figure who, he claims, controls peasants with his words and can even influence the laws of entire nations. As the client observed, his associate groveled on the floor before the silent assassin, Crow. The man explained that thanks to the streamer's talk of human rights, which had even reached the ears of royalty, his slavery business was losing money. The client himself finally spoke, cutting the conversation short. He declared that he understood the situation well enough, though his tone suggested a hint of dissatisfaction. He presented a large pile of coins as a preliminary payment, stating that he was counting on the assassin. The client noted that since the target was a coward who hid his identity, it would likely take nobles a while to find him, so there was no deadline. Unexpectedly, Crow spoke, flatly refusing the job. The assassin stated it was a request they could no longer take, which caused the client's young daughter to gasp in shock. In response to the refusal, the assassin moved with impossible speed. A powerful fist slammed into the client's face as he uttered a confused "why," while the associate who had been complaining was dispatched in a separate, brutal instant. Assassin stood over the client's lifeless body, the payment coins scattered across the floor. They calmly explained that since the client had died, the job could no longer be accepted, and thus the money would be left behind. The young girl cried out for a master. The sudden violence did not go unnoticed. From inside the residence, a mate heard a sound from the rooftop and grew concerned. Outside, the assassins stood silhouetted against the night sky, having made their escape. Landing on another rooftop, The assassins sighed, feeling beaten. They complained that the work outfit was a pain before reaching up to remove their distinctive mask. It came off, revealing the face of a young woman with long, dark hair. Perched on a roof's edge, she mused aloud, finding it unbelievable that someone would actually request the murder of Lord Streamer. She held the plague doctor mask in her hand, a cheerful yet cynical smile on her face. She remarked to herself that trash truly does exist in this world, a clear condemnation of her former client. Her professional demeanor then melted away entirely, pulling out a small device. She saw that a broadcast was starting. Her face lit up with pure adoration as she squealed, greeting her idol on the screen, Lord Streamer. The sound of the broadcast startles the man who had hired her, who wonders aloud what kind of bird could make such a noise. It is a testament to a strange reality. Even the legendary assassin was an obsessive, devoted listener. She holds the device close, her face flushed with adoration. She whispers to the voice on the other end, telling him that a lot happened today, but ever since she found his broadcast, her nights have been wonderful and refreshing. Her bliss is interrupted by the realization that she missed some of what he said. Annoyed at the waste, she tries to refocus, but a part of her daydreams, wishing he would scold her for being a useless assassin who can't even work properly at night. Meanwhile, the streamer, Kanata, puts on a tearful performance for his audience. He recounts how he did his best to make friends, but as soon as he spoke, they told him to shut up. He sniffles, asking his listeners if they could console him. Act is convincing. As she listens, a single tear of sympathy falls from Crow's eye onto her device. She murmurs how awful it is, her heart aching at the shaky, pained quality of his voice. Cesaro quickly curdles into fury. She sees at the thought of those who slighted him, thinking they should be thanking him for the privilege of hearing his voice. Recalling dismissive comments from other listeners, she clenches her fist, certain that if he were talking to her, she would never hurt him. The intensity of her feeling reminds her of her recent work, the noble she had just killed. Back in his room, Kanata's demeanor flips entirely. He grins and holds up a glass of water, cheerfully announcing that he used it to fake the crying sounds. He asks his audience for their opinion on his acting, adding that everything else he said was true. Reveal causes an uproar in the live chat. Messages flood the screen, a torrent of surprise, relief, and praise for his convincing performance. He feels a bit bad for worrying them, thanking everyone for their concern. He then notices a specific message and expresses surprise that it was read from his perch on a rooftop. He shares a new resolution with his audience rather than treating his bullies in kind. He wants to try interacting with them more proactively. He continues, musing that even if they don't become friends, perhaps they might become willing to simply hold a conversation with him. Listening to this, Crow is utterly captivated, her face flushing. She finds a sentiment not just hopeful, but graceful. He continues speaking to his audience, adding that if his bullies ever treat him any worse, he hopes everyone will be there to console him. A sudden notification sound interrupts his light-hearted request. Elsewhere, in a stark stone chamber, the assassin known as Crow listens intently, her unmasked face set with grim purpose. Clutching her sword, she questions if that is truly all he wishes for, before making a solemn vow to act on his behalf. Vow echoes through the macabre hall, surrounded by the skulls of past targets. She declares that she will end anyone who dares to harm him, no matter who they are. With her purpose set, she leaps in emotion, a blur of deadly intent. Back in his room, completely unaware of the deadly promise made in his name, Kanata looks over the flood of supportive messages on his screen. A warm, grateful expression spreads across his face as he reflects on how kind all of his listeners are. In a royal capital within a certain brothel, a young woman named Kana sees a client out. She offers a polite thanks for visiting, sir, as he waves and bids her farewell. With the transaction complete, she turns and walks back into the establishment, her expression hardening slightly. Inside, her boss greets her, praising her good work and mentioning that he changed the sheets for her. He remarks that the customers seemed quite satisfied, as expected of their top seller. Kana simply thanks him, clutching a pillow to her chest. Her confidence returns in a flash. She declares that of course they were satisfied, asserting that it was only natural since she was the one serving them. After all, she reminds him she is the facility's ace. Later, speaking with a different man, a manager, Kana asked to be left alone for a while, explaining she has her own work to attend to. She quietly expresses a desire to hear a certain person's voice, but the manager dismisses her, simply saying better luck next time as he walks away. Alone in her room, she begins to undress. Unseen, the manager is peeking through the cracked door, his thoughts lingering on her features. Sensing his presence, Kana whirls around and hurls a pillow at the door, shouting for him to get out. Once he's gone, she sighs, reflecting that it was a satisfying day nonetheless. Now settled in bed, she holds a small communication device, thanking the streamer, Herma Lord. Just as his broadcast begins, the manager is violently kicked out of her room, startled by the voice asking if he'd kept his listeners waiting. Kana shouts back at the device that he certainly did, her telling a mix of relief and adoration. She listens, her intense expression softens. The voice of the streamer, Kanata, had reached places he couldn't possibly imagine. A princess, a demon king, a saintess, an assassin. And now, it had reached a humble prostitute. Holding the device, Kana wonders aloud if he ran into some kind of trouble. She clutches the device to her chest, sighing wistfully. She wishes her malord were by her side, vowing that she would offer her entire body to him in a heartbeat. To her, he is a savior, the one who saved all those like her. Her past was a stark contrast to her present. Kana was born in the slums, a world away from the capital's finery. In order to survive, she was forced into the nightlife business, eventually clawing her way up to her current position. Later, sitting with her co-workers, one of them voices a common fear. They're still young, but once they get old, they will lose their customers. The question of whether they'll be forced back to the slums hangs in the air. Khan. His hand trembles as she takes a drink, admitting she doesn't even want to think about it. Despair was met with callous dismissal. The manager, with a cheerful thumbs up, noted that the customers had a great time, while her boss coldly reminded her that all she needed to do was work, dismissing her and her colleagues as filthy pieces of trash. Kana could only stare in disbelief, exclaiming that his words were unbelievable, especially since they had just found this work. Elsewhere in a well-lit establishment, a group of men discussed a similar topic with disgust. One man expressed his relief at noticing a woman was a harlot before getting engaged, while another agreed, stating that if he married such a person, his family name would die out before he did. This sentiment reflected the harsh reality of their world. Prostitute social standing was abysmally low, and they were often treated as less than human, like rotten food. Amidst this, Kana gently helped a drunken co-worker, suggesting it was time for them to go home. As they returned to their quarters, the manager, attempting to lift their dampened spirits, suggested they try to forget about the unpleasantness by tuning into the streamer's broadcast. He announced that it was just about to start. Gathered around the viewing device, they watched as the streamer, Kanata, began his broadcast. He admitted to being a bit of a clean freak, and mentioned seeing something that shook him, which prompted a laugh from Kana and the others. The manager remarked on how funny he was as Kanata prepared to read the next letter. As Tony shifted as he read the letter aloud, it was from a listener who called prostitutes filthy harlots and trash who dirtied the city. The words struck Kana and her friends like a physical blow, their laughter dying instantly. They lamented that no matter how hard they tried to escape their hell, people would always think of them this way. Kanata, holding the communication device, looked stunned and demanded to know who the listener thought they were talking about. In response to the hateful message, cannot have launched into a passionate defense. He questioned why anyone would judge someone based on their profession, arguing that selling one's body is not a crime. He declared that he found them brave and their work fine as they do what they must to live. His words, amplified by comments of support from other viewers, resonated deeply. He proclaimed that he wanted a world where working people could be proud and not be mocked. For Kana, who had never heard such words before, it was a revelation. His stream reached ears across the kingdom, sparking reflection among the populace and resulting in tears of happiness for many, like Kana. As a result, the societal perception of prostitutes began to change. Lying in her bed, Kana reflected that while she didn't know about other countries, their treatment within the kingdom was now second to none. She quietly thanked the streamer, hoping to repay him one day. Despite this societal shift, her personal struggles continued. She later recounted an attempt to make friends by talking to people. Only to be told to shut up the moment she opened her mouth. The memory was a pathetic, painful one. The memory sent her into a spiral of despair. Clutching the communication device, she cried out, asking who would even dare insult her in a lure like that. Just then, a knock came at her door. The manager entered, apologizing for the intrusion and mentioning something about the next day, while her boss appeared behind him, asking if she could console them a bit, a manic grin on his face. In the aftermath of the broadcast, public sentiment had soured completely. The identity of the streamer was a constant topic of debate, and for all those who had once worshipped him, their admiration had curdled into an identical, furious anger. Cries of "Exile him." "And who does he think he is?" echoed through the city. 1 week later, Kanata wandered the streets alone, his stomach growling with hunger. As he wondered if the bread stalls were still open, a gentle voice called out to him. He turned to find a familiar face with long, pointed ears, Princess Maria. She greeted him with a smile, confirming his name and noting the coincidence of their meeting. Stunned, Kanata could only stammer her title, prompting her to lean in and whisper, asking if it was truly all right for her to be out by herself. She casually dismissed his concern, admitting that her butler was likely in a state of panic at that very moment. A brief image of a frantic, elderly attendant confirmed her suspicion. Cannot have thought to himself that her situation hardly counted as being fine. Leaning closer still, she asked him directly if he was free. Flustered by her proximity, he could only manage a stammered affirmative. With his availability confirmed, she cheerfully suggested they go for a walk together. The proposition sent Kanata into an internal panic. He knew that if anyone saw him with her, his school life would be over. Despite the risk, a part of him wanted to go. As they walked, their arms brushing against each other, Maria suddenly stopped and asked if he could hear something coming from nearby. Kanata, caught off guard, was unsure how to respond. The source of the commotion was a woman being accosted in an alley. It was Kana, struggling against the grip of a long-haired man. He identified himself as a noble from Xandard, sneering that she couldn't act so defiant around nobility. Kana desperately pleaded for him to let her go. He clenched his fist, a determined glint in his eyes. For him, saving people was simply an everyday occurrence. With resolve, Kanata stepped forward, shouting at the man to release her. Maria stood beside him, adding her own sharp command for the noble to hold it right there. In a city street, Kanata confronts a green-haired man who is aggressively accosting a woman with long red hair. Kanata demands he release her, pointing out that she clearly does not want to go with him. Beside him, Maria, dressed in casual clothes, glares at the man, her expression one of pure fury. The aggressor shouts back, telling them to stay out of his business. The man dismisses Kanata and turns his leering attention to Maria, remarking on her beauty as he reaches for her. With a sharp, swift motion, she slaps his hand away. Stunned for a moment, his shock quickly turns to rage, and he screams that he will kill her. Kanata attempts to calm the escalating situation. Before the man can make good on his threat, Kanata lunges forward, his hand glowing with magical energy as he strikes the man's chest. The aggressor cries out as the spell takes hold, his body freezing in place. He struggles, realizing he cannot move, as Kanata calmly informs him the paralysis will wear off in a few minutes. He looks on, breathing a sigh of relief, as Maria gives him an enthusiastic thumbs up from behind the now immobilized man. She praises his impressive display, telling him to keep it up. Kanata, however, stares at his own hand in disbelief, shocked by what he has just done. The shock is interrupted as the red-haired woman approaches. She sternly questions if he, a commoner, understands the potential consequences of his actions. As she speaks, Kanata is struck by her beauty, momentarily distracted. He wonders who she is. and if the other girl, Maria, was truly the princess. She then softens her tone, reassuring him that she is fine and explaining that the man had been chasing her, attempting to purchase her. The term confuses Kanata. He asks if she is all right, his mind reeling with the thought that in this world, beautiful women must constantly fend off such advances. "The ground?" the paralyzed man scoffs, declaring that a kid like Kanata wouldn't understand. He crudely calls the woman a prostitute, ranting that he had offered to take her in because he liked her, but she had the gall to refuse. Kanata glares down at the man, his expression hardening. The woman flinches at his degrading words. Enraged, Kanata grabs the man by his collar, demanding to know who he thinks he is to discriminate against her for her job. He questions what crime there is in selling one's body. The commotion draws attention, and the paralyzed man smirks, noticing that a crowd is gathering, sees as the opportunity, shouting to the onlookers that he is a noble and that Kanata is a thief, offering a reward for his capture. Kanata is stunned by the false accusation. Just then, Maria steps forward calmly and asks the noble if he is an idiot, revealing that she was the one who called the people over. She winks at Kanata, apologizing for the delay. As the paralyzed noble curses her, she explains to Kanata that she informed the arriving city guards about a brave student saving a woman from a perverted noble. With a pointed look towards the armored figures, she adds for clarification to be precise. She reveals her authority with a calm smile, explaining to the stunned onlookers that the man being arrested is not just any noble, but a pervert. The woman Canada saved looks on in shock as Maria's identity is declared for all to hear. Maria Ataraxis, the third princess, the green-haired noble, now held fast by the city guards, can only stare in disbelief. With the situation handled, she turns to Kanata, her expression softening. She thanks him, explaining that his actions in restraining the noble were what allowed her to arrange for the arrest. In a distance, the guard can be seen leading the disgraced man away, watches them depart, remarking that the matter is finally settled and that patrols in the area will likely become stricter. As Maria prepares to leave, one of the guards informs her that they will seek her counsel on such matters in the future. Just then, the red-haired woman approaches him. She expresses her gratitude not only for his help, but also for affirming her and her line of work. To his surprise, she gently takes his hand. As she holds his hand and asks for his name, he stammers that it was nothing, all while discreetly showing his hands to his streaming device to reassure his audience. He tells her his name is Kanata. She introduces herself as Kana, stating she's a good judge of character. She hands him a small, carved token, instructing him to show it at the reception of the brothel where she works. It will grant him immediate access to see her. Announcing she has to get to work, Kana leans in close to the stunned Kanata. She whispers a provocative offer. If he's ever tired or needs to let out some stress, she'll help him, free of charge. With a final wave, she departs. Before he can process the offer, Maria appears suddenly at his side, her face uncomfortably close. He yelps, startled by her proximity, as she coolly remarks that Kana seems to be a very sharp one. He agrees with her assessment, noticing the setting sun. They both acknowledge it's time to head home and bid each other a safe journey. But as he turns to leave, Maria grabs his arm, her expression one of clear annoyance. She demands to know why he didn't invite her to walk home together since they take the same path, telling him to cover for her if any students see them. Internally, however, she blushes, thinking that her beloved Lord Streamer would have surely escorted her, drawing a line between the boy beside her and the persona she admires. As the city guards drag the disgraced noble away, his face twists in fury. He screams that he was humiliated, vowing that the commoner brat who caused this is different. Nearby, a man with sharp features and reddish-brown hair listens intently to the outburst, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple as he processes the noble's rage. Walking away from the commotion, Canada's eyes muttering that dealing with them will be a pain, though he insists he has nothing to do with it. Mario walks silently beside him. The man who had been listening now smirks with satisfaction. He has all the information he needs, a commoner living in the capital named Canada. While streaming, Kanata contemplates the influence of his own voice, posing a hypothetical question to his audience. What would they do if he declared his intent to conquer the world? The response from his most devoted listeners is immediate and absolute. One vows to offer him all the countries she has conquered. Another promise is to use her power to reset the world to zero, making him its new ruler. A third pledges to take care of anyone he wishes, offering him everything in her power and the world itself. He laughs nervously, dismissing his comment as a joke and noting that he isn't actually interested in world domination. He reminds himself to be more careful with his words, recalling the online conflicts he used to cause. Messages of unwavering support continue to flood in, with listeners telling him to do his best and that his voice brings them happiness. Deciding to do something more productive, he considers an in-real-life stream, but realizes that, for now, he can only show his hands. A message from the nameless princess appears, declaring her love for her lord and sending a donation of 10 gold coins. Caught in the moment, Kanata replies that he loves her too. In a classroom far away, Maria hears his words and collapses on her desk, letting out a series of muffled, ecstatic screams. The following day at school, Kanata sits at his own desk, cringing as he recalls the previous night's events, feeling he went too far. Feeling sleepy, he overhears his classmates discussing a rumor that Aguila, a student from the SS class, is the popular streamer. Maria and her friend debate the topic. The friend points out that Aguila is a noble, whereas the streamer claimed to be a commoner, concluding that he must be lying. Canada listens quietly, internally resolving to expose the impersonator on his next stream. Later, he scrolls through comments online, noting the speculation about the streamer's identity, and wondering how he could prove the truth without revealing he's a student. His curiosity about the impersonator grows. As he walks through the school, he spots a group of noble students, including the prince, and feels a surge of irritation. Elsewhere, the saintess Alfana looks at her own device, prompting a young girl beside her to ask if something is wrong, though Alfana dismisses her concern. His resolve hardens. He is the real streamer. He strides purposefully down the crowded school hallway, having located the group of nobles he intends to confront. He bursts in on the group, shouting at the prince, demanding to know why no one will believe him. The prince, Aguila, looks down on him with disdain, calling him a liar. Kanata reflects that in his old world, fake accounts were easy to spot, but here, the situation is different. He realizes with a jolt that the problem has, in a way, already been solved for him. After school, Kanata puts on his glasses, determined to understand the prince's motives. He finds Aguila alone and listens from a distance as the noble laments that the world revolves around people like him and that no one would listen to a faceless commoner. Aguila reveals his plan. By posing as the streamer, he can improve his family's reputation, take the money, and claim the audience for himself. The motive is now clear. He is suddenly approached by his friends. Akuta whispers that Aguila is a foolish man, and Rebecca agrees that someone so dumb is beyond saving. Zeus mentions they had plans with Aguila, confusing Kanata. Rebecca then turns to him and whispers, asking if he happens to know of Lord Streamer. Kanata freezes, stunned by the direct question. A flashback to 3 minutes prior shows the group finding Kanata. Rebecca reveals that she is a fan of a streamer, and Zeus expresses his surprise that she is too. Alfana then quietly admits that during her few moments of rest at the church, just hearing Lord Streamer's voice calms her heart. Back in the present, Rebecca whispers to a flustered Kanata, asking if he and the streamer are one and the same. He is saved from answering when the focus shifts to Maria, who internally fumes that everyone is obsessed with the streamer, calling them cultists. It was this obsession that led her to observe Canada's actions, and she now feels bringing her sword was the right call as his sins worsen. In the present, she is flustered, realizing that both Princess Alfana and the Saintess Rebecca are also listeners. When Alfana asks if she truly minds Canada's actions, Maria can only stammer in response, regained some composure, declaring that while she cannot forgive Aguila, she also cannot forgive anyone who tries to sabotage another. Rebecca then turns the question back to Kanata, asking for his opinion. He suggests that even the streamer wouldn't want Aguila to face harsh punishment, especially if he reflects on his actions. Rebecca points directly at him, pressing the issue. Before he can respond, a shadowy claw of immense power bursts from the ground, seizing Aguila and yanking him into darkness. The group stares in shock at the empty space. Canada cries out, wondering where he vanished, while Alfana confirms Rebecca's suspicion, stating she felt the power of an evil presence. In an instant, Aguila finds himself on a desolate, lightning-scarred courtyard before a towering, dark castle. A horned woman, the demon Lord Shrusa, stands before him and asks if he is the streamer. Her muscular subordinate expresses doubt, noting that Aguila's mana is too low to be the genuine article. Her expression darkens into a terrifying snarl as she looms over the petrified noble. She hisses that he dared to use the name of the one she loves, and for that sin, he must be prepared to pay the price. Aguila can only let out a shriek of terror as she closes in. Meanwhile, back in the school garden, Kanata and his friends are still reeling. Rebecca expresses concern that it's not wise for a princess to get involved, but Alfana reasons that if a demon was responsible, they likely kidnapped Aguila to confirm the rumors about the streamer. Kanata is taken aback by their sharp analysis. Their speculation is cut short as the demon lord shrouds and materializes before them, casually holding the unconscious and battered form of Aguila. She remarks on how embarrassing the situation is. As Canada recognizes Aguila's scent, he steels himself, determined to protect the girls. In response, Alfana and Maria immediately move into defensive stances, placed themselves between him and the demon, ordering him to stand back. Shrousa clarifies her intentions, explaining that her boss was angry about the impersonation and that she has come to return to pretend her. She then addresses Alfana and Maria directly, acknowledging the animosity directed at her. Demon Lord chuckles, her demeanor shifting entirely. She reveals that many demons, including the Demon Lord herself, are avid listeners of the streamer's broadcasts. She muses on how lovely it is to have a being who can connect both humans and demons. Turning her gaze to Kanata, she states she would more willingly accept him as the streamer than the pathetic impostor. Struggles to maintain his composure, desperately hoping his expression doesn't betray his panic. Alfana's mind races questioning just who Kanata is, now that it's clear even demons perceive his mana as abnormal. Sensing the escalating tension, Maria steps forward, introducing herself as a government official and attempting to de-escalate by ending the conversation. Shraza simply smiles, amused by the young lady's intervention. She departed in an unknown spheroid, leaving the group behind. While Princess Maria went to report the incident, Alfana slumped against Kanata, utterly spent from the day's events. Kanata, surprised by her sudden proximity, noticed how close she was. She sat with her for a moment before Maria returned, taking his hands to thank him for his help. She explained how happy it made her. Kanata, flustered, thought to himself that any man would protect a woman, but found a praise overwhelming. Though he couldn't see Alfana's face, he could still hear her soft breathing as Maria looked at him with admiration, telling him he was truly wonderful. A few days later, the consequences of the encounter became clear. Aguila, now completely transformed, frantically chased after Kanata and Maria, crying out for Lord Streamer to help him. After the incident, he had accepted all of the streamer's supposed ideals, made all of his family's crimes public, and was now vowing to rebuild his house to be fit for a true fan. Walked through town, pondering if the Demon Lord's ceasefire offered with genuine, when a voice called out to him. A mysterious, beautiful woman with dark skin and pointed ears stood before him. She shyly asked if he could guide her around the town. Kanata, taken aback, could only stare in surprise. In a bustling capital, Canada takes in the sights, remarking on the interesting architecture and shops. His companion, a tall woman in a sun hat, notes his reaction and asks if this is his first visit to a human town. He confirms that it is finding the capital truly fascinating. She apologizes for making him guide a self-proclaimed country bumpkin, but he cheerfully dismisses her concern, admitting he's happy to walk alongside a pretty girl. Internally, he thinks she's quite easy on the eyes. Flustered by the compliment, she offers to lead him to some of the town's nice hidden spots. Arrive at a walkway overlooking the city. As she leans on the railing, gazing at the beautiful scenery, her expression turns serious. She whispers to herself, lamenting that someone has been trying to destroy such a lovely view. Her somber tone gives Kanata pause. He senses a strange atmosphere emanating from her and bluntly asks if she is human. The question surprises her, but her shock quickly turns to delighted laughter. She finds his perception wonderful, admitting she thought the items from her subordinates would have hidden her identity completely. She presses the point, and she confirms the suspicion she is not human. She glances around, noting that the hidden spot is conveniently devoid of other people and magic sensors. As a reward for seeing through her disguise, she declares she will show him her true self and lunges forward with blinding speed. An immense dark aura erupts from her as she transforms. Her hat flies off, revealing sharp horns curling from her head. With Kanata caught in her grasp, she introduces herself as the humble demon, Shrausa. Startled but composed, he introduces himself as Kanata. Shrausa acknowledges his name, explaining that she has cut them off from the outside world with magic. In this isolated space, she states, he is the only one who can perceive her. She then asks for his thoughts on demons. Kanata recalls being asked this before and gives his honest opinion. He believes that despite the long history of conflict between demons and humans, it would be better if they could get along. He argues passionately that if someone dies in war, demons would surely grieve just as humans do. His words strike a chord with Shrausa. She agrees, confirming that demons do shed tears for fallen comrades. Praising his insight, she suddenly places a hand on his chest, not to attack, but to sense his power. She is stunned, exclaiming that he possesses a wonderful amount of mana, far greater than her own. Kanata realizes with a shock that she, like him, can see the waves of mana emanating from others. Shrausa seems momentarily flustered by this revelation, but quickly accepts it. In an instant, the dark barrier vanishes, and they are back on the walkway, with her human disguise restored. She dismisses her intense monologue as a personal hobby and takes both of his hands, looking at him earnestly. She asks if he agrees with her that just like this, humans and demons should walk hand in hand. She considers his words expressing a quiet hope that their goal can be achieved. Kanata affirms his agreement, stating with conviction that although the path will be tough, he believes they can definitely do it. His earnestness seems to amuse her. She recalls how he spoke of a peaceful future if they could coexist, a future she now hopes to witness. Her reaction leaves Kanata flustered, wondering if he misspoke. She then mentions another person who shares his views, a streamer. With a hint of excitement, she confesses to being a fan, explaining that this streamer's words were what changed her perspective. He had advocated for peace talks over conflict, a message that resonated deeply with her. Surprised, Kanata asks if this streamer is well known even in the demon world. She confirms his popularity, though she notes that the more stubborn elders are not swayed. Suddenly she leans in close, startling him, and enthusiastically invites him to visit her world, promising she can get him in if they go together. After they promise to meet again, Shrausa vanishes in a burst of energy, bringing Kanata's unusual day off to a close. Back in his room, Kanata reflects on the day's events. He realizes he never suspected Shroud's true identity, musing that no one in the human realm even knows the demon lord's true name. Deciding to end his dream a bit earlier than usual, he advises his viewers to get some rest before climbing into his own bed, exhausted from his unexpected role as a tour guide. He falls into a deep sleep, but his rest is not destined to be peaceful. Hovering silently above his bed is a mysterious figure clad in a dark coat and a plague doctor's mask. The intruder, Crow, observes the sleeping streamer and lets out a soft, ominous laugh. Cannot his day, it seems, was not over after all. A few days ago, a contract was struck. A young woman with reddish-brown hair confirmed to the Plague Master assassin, Crow, that she was the client this time. With a sinister smile, she asked if Crow remembered a certain man. The target was Kanata, the one she called the perverted noble who had been sent back to his home country because of Maria and Kana. Her request was simple. She won his head. This twisted with rage as she recalled the public embarrassment, vowing never to forgive him for making a fool of her. Crow accepted the job, noting from the file that the target was just a plain commoner in the capital. The job seemed easy. The target simply had poor luck. The client laughed, filled with vindictive glee, and told Crow she was counting on him. Present, the true identity of the assassin is revealed. A young girl, the real Crow, lands silently on a city rooftop. She remarks to herself that it has been a while since she last visited this place. With her objective clear, she decides to begin her mission by gathering intelligence. 1 hour later, her reconnaissance was complete. It had been surprisingly easy. Her findings painted a picture of a kind young man. A student who had helped a woman from a pervert, saved his sister from a scammer, and was a regular customer at a local bakery. She conceded that he seemed like a good person, making the job feel painful, but she resolved that she had no choice but to proceed, standing in a shadowed alley. She wrestled with her thoughts. The grim possibility of having to sell drugs again crossed her mind, but she pushed it aside, determined to continue her work as Crow. Her mind drifted to him, the streamer, an existence she knew only from across the screen, who had given even a doubtful assassin like her a reason to live. She saw a kinship between them. The streamer hid his true self, just as she, a young girl, hid behind the persona of Crow. This perceived similarity fostered a par-social bond, though she had only known of him by pure coincidence. As a fellow townsfolk, she never expected to grow so fond of him. Her thoughts mimicked his streaming style as she mused about the rare jobs in this world, called listening to his streams countless times, having fallen completely under his influence. During one such stream, he had brought up the topic of assassins, asking his audience if they knew of those who live by such a trait. The subject was dark, and she was shocked that the person she admired was so well informed about her world. Continued, acknowledging that assassins are feared, scorned, and used as convenient tools for crime. They hide in the darkness to eliminate their targets. Then he dropped a bombshell. He thought they were pretty cool. From his point of view, the people in that line of work were interesting. The unexpected praise left her utterly stunned and speechless, heart fluttered. She adored him, finding his gullibility endearing. Shaking herself from her long reverie, she focused on the task at hand. She had arrived at the target's house. To her surprise, a window was carelessly left open. As she prepared to slip inside, she whispered a silent apology. "Forgive me, Kanata." She entered the room, only to find Kanata awake and tying on a headband. He turned, startled by her presence. Before she could make a move, he announced it was time for his stream to start. With a swift kick, he sent her flying back out the window, casually stating he needed to close it so no one would hear. The would-be assassin was left outside, stunned, as her target began his stream completely oblivious to the figure just outside his window. But in that moment, whether through an assassin's keen eye or the profound intuition of a devoted listener, Crow realized the truth. Kanata and her beloved streamer were one and the same. Her professional instincts screamed that she couldn't let him notice her, not even for a moment. She resolved to not even blink, even if she started bleeding. Yet, the fan within her was overjoyed, thrilled to finally see him in person and listen to his stream live. As she grappled with her conflicting emotions, Kanata casually asked his audience for any food recommendations. Elsewhere, Prince Aguila chuckled to himself, remarking that he'd heard the assassin Crow was quite brutal and imagining she was making her target suffer immensely. The reality, however, was far different. Crow was blissfully enjoying what she considered her first live public recording session, hanging upside down just outside the window. Inside, Canada's attention was drawn to a message from the nameless princess, discontinued without rest and her sleep. Even the legendary crow eventually grew tired. She had stayed in Kanata's room, watching over him until exhaustion finally claimed her. He slept peacefully, only stirring slightly in the night. Eyes shot open and a scream tore from his throat. A small, unfamiliar girl was standing right there in his room, a faint, unsettling smile on her face. Sleeping from his bed, he pointed a trembling finger at the intruder. "Who are you?" he demanded. "Why are you here?" But to his question, Crow seemed to have a different priority. More so than a failure of her mission, she was simply happy that Kanata had finally seen her. With absolute, unwavering confidence, she prepared her answer. She gave a cheerful wink. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Lord Streamer." She began declaring herself to be a normal, unsuspicious person. Kanata could only stare and disbelieve before roaring back. "And you think I believe that?" From this day forward, his life as a streamer would be thrown into chaos, though he himself had no reason to know this yet. Kanata is stunned as the young assassin who followed him home. Mira reveals herself. He internally panics, realizing she knows his identity and everything about him. She pleads with him to believe her, declaring that she is a fan. With a bright smile, she formally introduces herself as Mira, adding that she also goes by the name Crow. He stares at her, then glances at the discarded plague Dr. Maskey on the floor. He hesitantly asks if she is the bird, the legendary assassin. Mira cheerfully confirms that it's her. A fat Canada finds utterly unbelievable, races questioning why such a notorious figure would sneak into his room to watch him sleep. With unnerving intensity, she repeats her reason. It is because she is his fan. Kanata realizes with a grimace that this conversation is going nowhere. He wonders aloud if he is the cause of her troubles, and she immediately confirms it. This strange turn of events is nothing like his previous life. Misinterpreting his distress as rejection, Myra's expression hardens. Stating that she understands, she bids him farewell and draws her short sword. As she moves to end her own life, Kanata lunges forward, shouting for her to stop. She ignores his plea, calmly stating that she will die now as she presses the blade to her throat. Her, frantically demanding to know what is wrong with her, and if she was truly trying to die. She replies with chilling simplicity that it is because she caused him trouble. He orders her to put the sword down. Her expression remains unervingly placid. She explains that if he thinks of her as a nuisance, then she clearly has no value as a living being. The declaration sends a shock through Kanata, whose heart pounds in his chest as he collapses to his knees. He remains on the floor, utterly overwhelmed. He realizes her obsessive mindset is so extreme, far beyond any label he can think of, that the sheer weight of it makes him feel like crying, struggling to process the situation. He runs a hand through his hair, admitting to himself that this isn't what he wanted, and that he can't think straight. He acknowledges that, in a way, her current state is his fault. He grabs a glass of water and takes a quick drink to steady his nerves. Turning back to the kneeling girl, he issues a simple command. For now, she is not to die. He adds, with grim practicality, that cleaning up the blood if she cut her head off would be a pain. He kneels before the young assassin, addressing her by her true name, Mira, exasperated. He questions her state of mind, but she misunderstands his concern, offering to take her life somewhere else. He quickly clarifies that her location is not the problem. In response, she leans in close, her expression earnest. She points out that he is now the only one who knows her true name, and then asks a chilling question. Since he knows her identity, does that mean she will now be killed? He remains unconvinced, doubting she is the infamous assassin at all and demanding proof. After moments' thought, she boasts of her skill and presence concealment, but then her train of thought derails. She furiously asks who else might be targeting him, offering to eliminate them immediately. He realizes with a sigh that this conversation is going nowhere. To demonstrate her skill, Mira suddenly vanishes from sight. Kanata stands alone in his room, utterly baffled. He looks around, searching for any sign of her, noting that he felt no magic whatsoever, and concluding her disappearance was not the result of spell. He stares at his own hands, trying to comprehend what just happened. A disembodied voice, Myra's, calmly states that she is standing right in front of him as a faint, shimmering distortion appears over his hand. A subtle touch from the unseen girl. Suddenly she materializes, her hands pressed against his chest. Startled by the contact, he yells an apology. She reassures him that it's fine, her face beaming with joy as she explains that simply being touched by her lord brings her happiness. He, however, is overwhelmed by a mix of embarrassment and exhaustion, regaining a sliver of composure. He questions why she has reappeared in his room. She begins to explain her reasoning with a confident smile. Her explanation leaves him slumped on the floor in disbelief. She cheerfully states that while her actions could get her killed, the result, being close to him, makes her incredibly happy. He can only stare horrified by the twisted logic of this world. He cautiously asks if this means she no longer plans to kill him. She reacts with explosive certainty, shouting that she would absolutely never harm him. In fact, she declares she would rather protect him and is now targeting the very person who hired her in the first place. Her declaration causes her to pause, recalling that her original mission was, in fact, to kill him. She begins to curse the client who gave her the order. The scene shifts to a later time, where Kanata sits at a desk in a classroom, wondering when his lessons will end. Outside the window, Miro watches him intently, marking the second day of her new life as a stalker. Elsewhere, the consequences of Myra's defection become clear. Amidst the wreckage of a room, a figure in a plague doctor's mask sits stunned, a teacup still held in their hand. From outside, a furious voice bellows, branding the defeated operative Crow a traitor. Having returned to Kanata's side, Mira grins with childish delight. He gives a confident thumbs up, seemingly addressing an unseen audience, apologizing for the delay. She concludes her report of the events with a cheerful summary, adding a gentle yet unsettling request that they avoid needless killing in the future. Processes her words, internally weighing her reliability as a bodyguard against the sheer terror of having her so close. His thoughts are cut short as he notices his communication terminal on the desk begin to light up. Reaching for the device, he wonders if the letters he had requested have finally arrived. Hoping the distraction will help him calm his nerves, he stares at the glowing screen in confusion as an unfamiliar voice emanates from it, addressing him with a startling title. "My lord." Screen then flashes with a bold, damning message. "Streamer, you are a mass murderer." Canada freezes his eyes wide with shock. The message continues, declaring his sins unforgivable and accusing him of using heinous means just to become famous. The message explains its reasoning. To project one's voice over such a great distance would require an equally large amount of mana. It posits that the only way to gather such power is to draw it from a large number of humans, concluding that he would be dead if he had attempted it alone. A silhouetted figure appears on the screen, their voice laced with accusation. They demand to know just how many lives the streamer has taken and how much suffering he has caused to achieve his current position. The message concludes with a solemn, unwavering vow from his accusers. They declare they will never forgive him, and that they will, without fail, smite him down. He stood frozen, the words on his terminal echoing in his mind, wondering what the sender could have possibly meant. Nearby, Mira considered the implications of the accusation, realizing that such a rumor could spread like wildfire in just a few days. Mind raced to defend himself, insisting internally that he was only using his own mana for the streams. But his frantic thoughts were interrupted by a strange sight. Miro was kneeling by his bed, pressing his pillow to her face and deeply inhaling. "So this is my lord's scent," she murmured to herself. A wave of exasperation washed over Kanata. This was going to be a pain. Couldn't believe this was happening to him. Reflecting on how, in his past life, similar baseless rumors would lead to celebrities being saddled with bizarre reputations. As he grappled with his thought, Mira suddenly appeared at his side, looking up at him with concern. "My lord," she asked what happened. Her question went unanswered, pushing aside the threat for a moment. He pointed an accusatory finger at her. "Hold on," he demanded. "What did you do to my bed earlier?" Mira simply tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Whatever could you be talking about?" In the world of ataraxia, the title of streamer had become a name of great renown. The unique culture of streaming he introduced had steadily spread among the populace. However, many who were charmed by his values and beliefs had developed an obsessive devotion, becoming what could only be described as yandere listeners. Influence had brought about sweeping societal changes, the betterment of discrimination based on profession, the destruction of bandit guilds, a ceasefire with the demons, and a release of slaves. This power to move entire countries with a single word was envied by many. Among them were those who, in their own way, were now trying to perform similar streams. Meanwhile, in a small country near Rhogius, within the estate of the noble Sunday household, a young woman collapsed onto the floor. She cried out in pain, lamenting that there was nowhere near enough mana. She and others like her pleaded for forgiveness, unable to go on. A man grabbed her by the hair, lifting her head and roaring that every single one of them was worthless. He, Master Rikba, sat lounging in a chair, questioning why he had even bought such ungrateful credence. An elderly attendant approached, reminding his master that, as he already knew, mana was as valuable as blood to them. The attendant continued his report, stating that this was the last batch of slaves, and there were none left to provide mana. He advised against draining them to their limits. As they would die, needlessly increasing expenses, it would be best to let them rest. Rick Butt cursed the kingdom's princess for enacting new laws against slavery, making it difficult to acquire new stock, but then smirked, declaring his own success. A guard then approached, and Rikba confirmed with him that they had successfully captured an SS rank adventurer the day before. He scoffed at the idea of treating the slaves nicely, ordering them to be returned to their cells to rest. He then turned to his attendant and asked for status update. The old man, reviewing a clipboard, reported that the captive had enough mana for 5 minutes of streaming time. Inside a large capsule, the adventurer Akuta floated in healing water, recovering from his travels. He stared at the device in his hand, his eyes wide with disbelief. 5 minutes. He couldn't comprehend how the streamer could possess enough mana for such a broadcast. His frustration erupted. He shot up from his seat, roaring that it was impossible for one person to have enough mana for an entire night's dream. He questioned just how many lives the streamer had sacrificed to achieve this. It was in this moment of outrage that the dark rumors began to spread. Fueled by this conviction, he addressed his assembled soldiers. He declared their mission to unveil the streamer's supposed sins and drag him down to hell. He commanded them all to anonymously report everything they could, and they responded in unison, ready to obey. Execute his plan. He demanded the mana required for a 5-minute stream. He announced his intention to broadcast at the very end of the streamer's own transmission the next day. Meanwhile, unaware of the plot against him, Canada stared at his own device, a look of mild surprise on his face as he read a message. He stood up from his desk as Mira, who was in his room, questioned if it was all right to leave things as they were. Kanata replied that, while he wasn't entirely sure, he wanted to wait and see how the situation unfolded. She floated closer, expressing her worry that her milord would be misunderstood by this world. Kanata, rubbing his neck, noted how she was just hanging around and wondered aloud when she planned to go home. Suddenly sporting a pair of glasses, Mira offered to take care of his pain, assuring him there would be no killing involved. Kanata could only question where the glasses came from. He vehemently rejected the idea. Undeterred, Mira then proposed a more gruesome alternative, selling their organs. Elsewhere, Maria and her friends watched a broadcast on their own devices. Seeing one of them eagerly licking the screen, Maria sighed to herself, lamenting her mistaken belief that all of her fans were gentle people. Clearly they were not. Back in his room, Kanata decided he needed to go for a walk to cool down. Mira immediately volunteered to join him. He agreed on the condition that she remained unseen. When he asked where she wanted in return, she simply replied that taking her along was payment enough. He stretches under the full moon, enjoying the cool night air. Beside him, Mira flushes, clenching her fists and defensively insisting she is not a stalker. Moment of peace is interrupted by a sudden vibration from his phone. A broadcast has begun, a voice derisively addressing the fools mindlessly enjoying the streamer's antics. The speaker, Rikba, promises that within 5 minutes he will teach everyone the truth about the streamer's evil deeds. Across the city, citizens stop and listen to the broadcast on their own devices. Murmurs spread through the crowd as some begin to wonder if the accusations are true. Even Alfana Akuta and Rebecca listen with growing concern as the idea that the streamer kills so many people begins to take root. Elsewhere, Maria stares at her screen, her initial confusion turning to wide-eyed shock. The words really escape her lips as the gravity of the slander sinks in, her expression hardening with disbelief. Her shock gives way to explosive fury. With a furious cry, she declares there is no way he would ever do such a thing, shattering her device in a powerful grip. The broadcast's reach extends even further. Lady Shrusa listens to the same accusations, her face contorted in a silent, menacing rage as she glares at the source of the broadcast. Back on the rooftop, Kanata calls out to Mira, sensing her distress. She remains silent, trembling with a barely contained, destructive impulse, realizing that his presence is the only thing preventing her from annihilating everything nearby. Meanwhile, Ripa meets with an unknown individual. The nobleman, unaware of the forces he has provoked, has metaphorically stepped on a sleeping tiger's tail. His new contact speaks, asking for a favor and acknowledging the dangerous path they're now treading together. As his friends Akuta and Zeus depart for the day, Kanata sits alone on a campus bench, pondering his next move. Elsewhere, a clock ticks, signaling the star of lessons. Nearby, he overhears Maria and her friend discussing his stream from the previous day. They question the rumors of him killing people and express disbelief that anyone could possess such a vast amount of man on their own, noting the significant impact his broadcast is having. Later in class, he reflects on the many inquiries he's received about how his streams work. He has consistently evaded the questions, feeling his only real explanation would be the unhelpful truth. He could do it simply because he is who he is, possesses a unique power, a gift from his reincarnation, infinite magical energy. This allows him to cast high-level magic repeatedly, without concern for mana consumption, and renders him immune to energy-draining abilities. However, it also means that a moment of carelessness could result in him drastically overpowering everyone around him. He resolves at its best to keep this ability a secret to avoid complications. As long as he can continue his streams, he is content. Walking through the school halls, he worries that conspiracy theories about him might be escalating. Suddenly, he is startled by the abrupt appearance of the assassin, Mira. She apologizes for the delay. She presents him with the letter, stating she did her best to gather the information he needed. Visibly flustered by her proximity, Kanata asks her to give him some space, much to her confusion. He thanks her for her work, but gently requests that she refrain from using violence. Mira blushes, admitting she had to use a bit of force, but affirms that if it is an order from him, she would be willing to do anything. The praise is too much for the assassin. Overwhelmed at being thanked by the one she calls Lord Streamer, Mira loses consciousness and collapses from exhaustion. Kanata can only watch in surprise as she falls asleep on the spot. He opens the document she provided. The intelligence points to a noble from the Rogia's kingdom, a small and distant country, as the one pulling the strings. He reviewed the documents, realizing the situation was far worse than a simple rumor. An entire organization, born of envy, had formed against him. Mira, the source of this detailed intelligence, looked on, pleased with her work, impressed by her efficiency. He noted how quickly she had uncovered the truth. Mira, kneeling before him, offered to gather even more information if he wished. Kanata simply asked if she was truly fine with undertaking such tasks. Without hesitation, he gave her a new assignment. Holding his communication device, he instructed her to use her network information to infiltrate a specific stream. Eager to serve, Mira immediately accepted the mission. Later, dressed in a school uniform, Kanata reviewed the details of the rumors being spread. The document outlined a malicious narrative that he gains the trust of former slaves only to drain them of all their magical energy. He read on, scoffing at the creativity of the slander. The text claimed his supporters were brainwashed, and that his death was the only way to stop his supposed crimes. As he absorbed this, Mira departed on a new mission. His composure finally cracked. Slamming his fist against the wall, he let out a bitter laugh. He was furious that their selfish assumptions were now targeting not only him, but his listeners as well. Meanwhile, in the demon realm, Kana flew into a destructive rage over the rumors, forcing her comrades to restrain her. Lady Shroudza watched calmly, noting that the repair costs would be significant in that. For now, the number of listeners who believe the slander seems small. Back at the academy, Kanata walked through a courtyard, overhearing a group of students that included Maria. They discussed the rumors, wondering aloud if they were fake, though one admitted the slander was frighteningly plausible. He now understood just how far the lies had spread. He found a quiet place to sit, contemplating the situation. He knew he needed a simple way to resolve the misunderstanding, as his words alone would not be enough. Ignoring it would only allow the problem to fester. Then, an idea struck him. Looking at his audio-only streaming setup, he realized he could show his hands during a broadcast. He thought that mimicking the school entrance exam in this way might be the key to changing everything. The key to his plan was an item Maria recognized instantly. It was the man of measurement orb from the entrance exam, a device used to classify a person's magical capacity. She realized he would need one of them. He knew that if he could use it on stream for all his listeners to see, it would serve as undeniable proof that he was broadcasting using his own power. But as he sat alone on a campus bench, the reality of the situation weighed on him. The orb was expensive, not something that would be casually lent to an ordinary student. From a distance, Alfana and Maria watched him, sensing his distress. Watching him, Maria remarked that he was just like her. Alfan understood, asking if she meant the lying Lord Streamer. Maria clarified her point. She understood his desire to purge this world of sinners, a goal she shared. Their decision made. The two approached, their voices calling his name and startling him from his troubled thoughts. She quickly stood to face them, acknowledging Princess Maria and Alfana with surprise. Alfana looked at him with concern, asking what was wrong, though she added that he didn't need to explain for her to understand. Internally, she felt a powerful urge to help, realizing she had to be careful not to lose herself and her feelings for him. She reminded him of his own character, recalling moments where he had helped others in need. He was, she affirmed, a person that could trust. Because of this, she extended a hand, making a formal offer. Now that he was the one in need, they would lend him their help. She urged him to share his burden with them. Her reasoning was simple. It just so happened that they were born blessed with power and influence, resources they could now use on his behalf. She continued her plea, explaining that their power and resources must be used to help those in need. With her hands clasped earnestly, she looked up at him and asked if he could please rely on them. His heart pounded in his chest as he clenched his fist, a wave of relief washing over him. He realized that if it was these two, he could truly trust them. As he came to this conclusion, Maria spoke up, asking both him and Alfana if she could ask a favor of them. He raised a hand to his chin, his expression turning serious. He apologized, stating that before they proceeded, there was something he had to tell them. He confessed that he is a streamer. Alfana and Maria stand frozen, their eyes wide with shock as the revelation settles. Why cannot a fidget nervously, his arms crossed? He worries that his confession was too sudden, doubting they would even believe him. He mutters a quiet apology for the abruptness. His thoughts are interrupted by Alfana, who calmly states that she has known all along. A stunned Canada asks how long, and she explains it was since they first met, recalling a small wound she had seen on his right hand. She continues, clarifying that right after their meeting, she saw his hands during his stream, and the connection became obvious. The realization dawns on Kanata. Suddenly, Maria erupts, her face a mask of horrified understanding. The truth finally hits her. Kanata is Lord Streamer. Alfana confirms it was surprisingly easy to deduce, especially given his accent. Kanata, flustered, realizes he must have been unconsciously giving them information. Alfana and Maria simply state that it was only natural for them to figure it out. Alfana then steps forward, gently taking his hands in hers. She holds him firmly, reassuring him that even knowing the truth, they are his fans and would never do anything to cause him trouble. Her expression becomes intensely serious. She declares that if they did, they would have no right to call themselves fans. Maria steps forward as well, placing her hand over theirs. She agrees with Alfana, adding that they want to keep hearing his voice and his usual fearless attitude. She then leans and extremely close, demanding you drop the formalities and stop calling her princess. Overwhelmed by their combined intensity, Kanata can only stammer out his agreement. He listened, somewhat stunned, as Alfana and Maria declared themselves as allies. Alfana, reminding him of her status as a princess and a priestess, offered to grant anything he desired. He could only manage to acknowledge them by name. They each took one of his hands. He reflected on the fact that even though they knew his identity, neither of them had leaked his secret. They had kept it safe. He knew he could trust them, yet a strange feeling crept over him. Their demeanor felt different from usual, almost unnervingly intense, leaned in, their faces unnaturally close as they stared at him. A wave of panic washed over Kanata as he glanced around, worried that someone might see or overhear their conversation. Alfana, with a confident wink, revealed she had anticipated his concern and had already cast a spell to ensure their privacy. Relieved, Kanata thanked her. She then turned serious, stating that the purpose of their meeting was to discuss the rumors and conspiracies surrounding his identity as streamer. She elaborated, explaining that she had requested her mother and father to investigate the matter. Thanks to a mysterious cooperator, they had already traced the rumors to their source. Kanata was stunned by the speed of their progress, which Maria proudly confirmed. Alfana continued her report, stating that while the rumors accused him of being a mass murderer, their country's investigation had found no evidence to support such claims. The one truth they did uncover, however, was that his activities as Lord Streamer required an amount of mana far exceeding that of any normal person. This fact led her parents and indeed the leaders of every country to two possible conclusions. Either he possessed more mana than anyone else in the world, or he was using some unknown device to generate the necessary energy to stream. Maria then clung to his back, urging him not to feel he had to rely solely on them. She explained that the name Lord Streamer now held significant power, and that he had garnered unwavering support from the common people. Many of these supporters, she revealed, were already taking action to quell the malicious rumors. Was struck by the revelation. So many people, his believers, were ready to fight for him and would not forgive any action that troubled him. While grateful, he realized he didn't want anyone else to clean up his mess. With renewed determination, he resolved to prove his own innocence with his own hands. He declared his trust in both Maria and Alfana, though his face flushed with embarrassment at their current predicament. The two girls, having tumbled to the ground, looked up at him, dazed but resolute. As they recovered and stood before him, he gathered his thoughts, preparing to explain his strategy. Alfana, ever direct, prompted him to reveal the plan. His plan centered on a specific object, the orb they all saw upon first entering the academy. He reminded them that it was considered a valuable artifact, one that was strictly forbidden to be removed and was kept under lock and key somewhere deep inside the school, now sitting together on a bench. He elaborated on his intentions, stating with conviction that this was a problem he needed to resolve personally. In response, both Alfana and Maria leaned in impossibly close, their faces inches from his. Alfana vowed that regardless of how things turned out, she would take full responsibility, leveraging her authority as a princess to secure the necessary permissions. Maria echoed the sentiment, granting her own permission as the priestess. The intensity of their support and their proximity left Canada completely flustered. He was grateful for their unwavering help, though he silently wished they would give him a little more personal space. With this new alliance forged, the stage was set. Streamer and his believers had finally joined hands to combat the rumors, and his next move would be revealed very soon. Outside the school building, with classes concluded for the day, Kanata turns to Alfana and Maria. He carries a broken computer monitor, thanking them both for their help and expressing confidence that he can get things ready for tomorrow, settle their preparations. He confirms the details of their operation. The plan, he states, with a determined grin, will begin at 6 in the evening tomorrow at their designated meeting place. Both Alfana and Maria affirm that they understand. Later, a knock sounds at the door. Maria opens it, looking up to see who has arrived. It is Alfana, who strides into the room with a severe expression. Maria asks what is wrong, but Alfana's attention is fixed elsewhere as she asks if this is about Lord Kanata. Maria confirms it is, and the realization strikes Alfana with the force of a physical blow. Lord Streamer truly is her classmate. She seizes Maria by the shoulders, shaking her frantically. Maria pleads for her to calm down, but Alfana, completely overwhelmed, shouts back that there is no way she can possibly calm down. Her agitation erupts into a destructive frenzy, shattering furniture and glass around her as she screams that her idol is her own classmate. Maria dodges the flying debris, begging her to stop destroying the room. A moment later, with the room magically restored, Maria looks down at a bandaged and flustered Alfana on the floor. Alfana insists she isn't lying, explaining that while she was never certain, she had her suspicions because his way of speaking always felt familiar. She continues to mutter Kanata's name in a daze. Maria leans in close, telling her to stop murmuring, and points out that she can now simply use their meetings to make Lord Kanata fall for her. The suggestion causes an immediate and drastic shift in Alfana's mood. She now stands before a chalkboard filled with equations. Her expression, one of intense calculation, as she ponders which name to call him. Maria watches this sudden change, stunned by the quick shift in her friend's focus. Immediately leaps to an absurd conclusion, her mind racing with plans for a wedding ceremony. Since they know each other's identities, she reasons they are practically married. Maria, looking on, dryly points out the flaw in her logic. Her thoughts manifest as a brutish, aggressive version of herself, who roars that she will be Lord Kanata's bride, not Maria. While the real Maria chuckles at the joke, a distant Kanata warns her that Alfana becomes unhinged when she invokes her authority as a princess. Aggressive fantasy fades, replaced by a chillingly serious demeanor. Alfana pokes Maria sharply, warning her not to cause any trouble for him at school, making a clear distinction. There, he is Lord Kanata, not Lord Streamer. She vows not to forgive Maria if she interferes, a look of intensity on her face that Maria has not seen in a long time. Their intensity reminds Maria of their childhood, specifically a time when Alfana, looking feral, admitted to replacing Maria's alarm clock with a bomb when they were 5. A younger Maria can only apologize for some unknown transgression. Returning to the present, Maria urges Alfana to think clearly. She reminds her that even after the current situation is resolved, the two of them will be the only ones who know his true identity. She continues, explaining that this gives them an advantage over all other fans and allows them to provide him with direct support from now on. The logic of this statement finally breaks through Alfana's obsessive haze. This is the core of their advantage. The number of listeners who currently know the streamer's real identity is incredibly small. The group consists of Kana, Maria, Alfana, and Rebecca. Meanwhile, another of those few listeners, the demon lord Shrusa, stares at her monitor in shock and dismay, wondering why there is no stream schedule for the day. Back in the room, Maria agrees with Alfana's new understanding. They will support him from the shadows in any way they can, ensuring the world doesn't discover his secret. Alfana clenches her fist, her resolve hardening. She declares that this is how true fans who know the truth should behave. It seems the previous description of them as obsessive, dangerous listeners was a mistake. They have found their true purpose as guardians. Her new pact with Maria had fundamentally changed their relationship. They were more than just fans now. This new alliance was sealed with a firm handshake. Maria declared them friends and allies, united in their goal to support Lord Kanata. Alfana enthusiastically agreed, her expression bright with shared purpose. It appeared to be a moment of wonderful friendship between two young women. But beneath this veneer of camaraderie, a fierce rivalry burned, symbolized by the spirits of a dragon and a tiger. Alphana silently vowed that she would become Canada's favorite, while Maria was equally determined to be his undisputed number one. Their claims were rooted in their history with him. Alphana asserted she was the first to recognize his talents, but Maria countered, boasting she was the first in the world to know the streamer's true identity. Any notion of simple friendship was a misjudgment. They were now driven by a possessive, all-consuming fervor. Returning to the matter at hand, Alphana held up a small device. She noted that Lord Kanata was busy preparing for the coming revolution and wouldn't be streaming, confirming that Maria was as much of a fan as she was. Alphana proposed a plan to use his archive streams to raise their morale for the next day. Eyes glinted with approval. Maria agreed it was a good idea, adding that with no classes scheduled, simply bracing themselves would be insufficient. Competitive spark reignited instantly. Alphana asked which archive stream Maria had in mind. Maria accepted the unspoken challenge, confidently specifying the stream where he conducted a question and answer session while affecting a cool demeanor. They prepared to watch. The device played a recording of Canada's voice, a charismatic and playful invitation echoing from the small speaker. "Say, you guys, how about you all become on?" followed by a light-hearted laugh. As his voice filled the room from the small device, all restraint vanished. Maria, fist punching the air, roared her adoration for Lord Streamer. Alphana, overcome with emotion, contorted on the floor, joining the chorus with a fervent cry of "We love you." Having lost all need to hide their feelings, their passionate screams echoed through the night. From Kanata's perspective, the plan is set. Maria and her friends confirm their meeting for the following day at 6 in the evening. He clenches his fists, filled with anticipation. Even if it's all a misunderstanding, he can't wait for the special stream tomorrow to resolve it. To do that, however, he must first prepare. A teacher stands guard at the school gate, adamantly refusing to let any students out at this hour. Kanata realizes that, as a normal student, he has no hope of convincing the man to let him pass. He wonders if there is anyone who could get past the guard. As the thought crosses his mind, Mira suddenly appears, clinging to his back. Startled, he asks how long she's been there, but she simply replies, "Did you call?" carried through the night sky. He looks up at his companion with a determined grin. Mira asks what he needs from the capital so late, and he explains that there's a certain adult whose help he requires. He arrives on a rooftop where Kana has been waiting. She tells him she's ready to get down to business, but a flustered Kanata quickly clarifies that's not the reason for his visit. Urgently requests an introduction to someone who can make an outfit for him quickly, offering to pay any amount. He stresses that the person must be discreet. Understanding immediately, Kana assures him not to worry and promises to write a map for him right away. With Mira now sleeping on his back, he spends the entire night visiting various shops in the capital, including an armor smith. They continue their errands until the sun dawns, with only an hour left before the scheduled meeting time. He finally arrives at the location Maria specified, a grand, castle-like structure. He stares up in disbelief, wondering if they can really borrow such a place for simple stream. Inside, dressed in a finely made suit, he expresses his satisfaction with his ally's work. He inspects his new, detachable streaming camera and prepares for the broadcast. Just as he thinks he's ready, a knock sounds at the door. He bids them enter, knowing the real challenge is about to begin. He finds himself with Alphana and Maria, both of whom are trembling with nerves. He reminds them that they didn't have to show up, but they protest, insisting that their presence will make it less likely for anyone to discover he's a commoner. This situation was the result of their meeting the previous day, where he had considered revealing himself. That conversation, he had realized his proposal would expose him as a student living in the school dormitories. Alphana confirmed that she had already deduced as much just by looking at his hands, much to his dismay. In response to his predicament, Alphana offered a solution. He could use her secret villa for the stream. She assured him it was a place so perfectly concealed that even her parents were unaware of it, a place that people wouldn't notice, even if they were looking directly at it. She explained that this was possible due to her magic as a saintess, which wards people away by causing them to simply not care for the affected area. This magic was so effective that it had once confounded even seasoned adventurers who sensed something was amiss but couldn't identify the massive castle before them. Alfana promised to modify the barrier so he could see it. Maria then proposed combining her own magic with Alfana's, creating a space where they could stream freely without any fear of their location being tracked. Kanata could only marvel at their abilities. Maria clarified that while her magic was a sacred inheritance, she couldn't betray. She would make an exception for him. Immediately after, both she and Alfana latched onto him, shouting that they had to accompany him to open the villa and ensure he wasn't discovered. Overwhelmed, he finally agreed, back in the present, standing within the villa's lavish interior. He felt the magical energy shimmering from the walls and resolved to thank them properly later. His thoughts were interrupted as Mira appeared, gave him a swift thumbs up, and then vanished from sight. He realized with a start that she had only pretended to leave before. Birched comfortably outside, Mira sipped a drink. She had somehow bypassed Alfana's powerful magic and decided to stand guard, ensuring Kanata could stream until he was satisfied. Across the city, Kana stared at her device, a worried expression on her face as she wished Kanata good luck. Elsewhere, a crowd had gathered to watch the broadcast, their anticipation mixed with skepticism. Akuta and Zeus stood among them, speculating that the streamer would likely make an excuse and fail to appear. Meanwhile, in the demon realm, Lady Shruza watched with a confident smirk, declaring her belief in the streamer. Her subordinates were less certain. One noted that he was different from other humans, while another questioned if he was a threat. They all agreed to watch what they assumed would be his final stream, back in the concealed villa. As a clock chimed the appointed hour, Maria turned to Kanata. She informed him that it was time. Alfana stood nearby, watching silently. He acknowledged them, confirming that they should proceed as planned. Taking a steadying breath, Kanata admitted to himself that he was nervous, but resolved to enjoy this moment, the world's first evolution of live streaming. While he prepared, his adversary, Prince Aguila, stood before a massive, expecting crowd. He proclaimed that no matter what excuse was made, this would be the streamer's final broadcast. Aguila demanded that the streamer expose his true self, his hands, and his awful voice for all to see. Unmoved by the prince's public threats, Kanata clenched his fist. He gave a final instruction to his companions, telling them to act if they saw any opening. As the stream went live, a wave of collective shock rippled through all who were watching. From Kana to Lady Shruza, from Prince Aguila to the king himself, a single unified cry of disbelief erupted. The source of their astonishment was the figure who appeared on screen. It was not an unmasked commoner, but the streamer in his full helmeted persona, greeting his listeners and asking if they had been waiting for him. Confident greeting echoed out to the world. And just like that, the curtains began to fall on what would be called the short-lived legend of Streamer. On screens across the land, the masked figure known as the Streamer makes his grand entrance. He greets his audience, asking how he looks, but stating they'll have to forgive him for not showing his face. His unique manner of speaking and moving captivates his viewers, including Akuta and Zeus, who watch in utter amazement, where Lady Shruza watches the broadcast with fierce determination. She wanted to prove her own innocence against certain allegations, and so she decided to do a slightly different kind of stream this time. In another room, Kana thrashes about equally engrossed in event. Most of the controversy sits upon a throne. Prince Aguila recounts the situation, explaining that recently, a certain country has been alleging that the streamer commits mass murders in order to conduct his broadcasts. The stream himself, his expression twisting with contempt. Finding the whole affair of pain, he cannot ignore people who treat others like criminals based on mere guesses. He interprets the streamer's words as a threat, sneering as he wonders if he's being challenged before shouting at his own viewers, calling them idiots. Stifle their laughter at his outburst, quickly offering apologies. On the broadcast, the streamer complains that due to the recent troubles, he can only sleep at night, which he finds incredibly annoying. Shifts his tone, announcing to his audience that today he will show them exactly how his streams work. But first, he intends to introduce his accomplices, asking for the camera to be handed to him. The live comments scroll rapidly, filled with viewers' excitement and demands for him to prove his innocence. Camera pans, Lady Shrausa stares in disbelief. Someone helped him. Someone other than her. On the screen, she sees two figures who, according to the streamer, came from afar to his system. Two young women step forward to address the puzzled audience. One introduces herself as Maria Adaraxes, the third princess of Rogias. The other reveals she is Alfana, more famously known as the saintess. They explain that they are both fans and ask the streamer to let them join, a request he agreed to. Watching on her device, Kana realizes with a start that these two are tough rivals. Alfana immediately takes command. Raising a finger, she declares that by the name of the saintess, the audience must obey. She casts a spell, commanding everyone to focus only on Lord Streamer's words and actions. In the background, Kanata flails, startled by her sudden, authoritative move, quickly recovers, giving a thumbs up to the two women and thanking them. As the audience comments on focusing and not judging by guesses, Kanata decides it's best to hide the comments in the archive for now, muttering to himself about the absurdity of the situation. Where Prince Aguila clutches his head in frustration, the streamer's words echoed in his mind, creating a fog that made it impossible to concentrate on finding the man's true identity. His followers could only offer their apologies for the situation. Meanwhile, during this broadcast, the mass streamer prepared for his next demonstration. He turned to the saintess, announcing that it was time for the main act, gesturing towards an object on a nearby table, requested that the princess bring the item forward. As she complied, he explained to the audience that the device was an orb designed to measure the amount of mana a person possesses, fully declared that his own mana was infinite, allowing him to power his streams without any assistance, and that he would now prove it. To provide context for the viewers, the saintess added that the orb's ranks are based on color and intensity, noting that her own SSS ranked mana shines with a gold light. The crowd, including a stunned Gila, reacted with utter disbelief at the claim of infinite power. The plan had been formulated the night before. Kanata, without his mask, had explained his intention to pour mana into the orb. He acknowledged that some might dismiss it as a trick, which the saintess agreed was a risk with such a simplistic method. However, Kanata was confident that having both a princess and a saintess present to vouch for him would convince anyone. Turning to the live broadcast, he warned his audience not to look away. With a determined expression, he reached for the orb, stating that he was committing to the demonstration, placed both hands upon a crystal sphere, and a powerful energy immediately began to surge through it. Was unexpected. Both Maria and Alfana watched in confusion as the orb first shone with a vibrant gold light, only to shift to a creepy, unsettling black before returning to gold once more. Orb began to vibrate intensely. Canada noted with some relief that it hadn't broken this time. The saintess, however, looked on in shock, realizing that his infinite mana was actively trying to break free from the confines of the orb. She had never witnessed such a phenomenon. Suddenly, the orb lifted from its stand, floating in midair and shining with the light of a rainbow. All three, Kanata, Maria, and Alfana, stared in astonishment. Maria cried out that it was floating, while Alfana remarked that she had never seen it produce such colors. The orb then shot away like a comet. He scrambled onto the roof, shouting into the night sky as the orb flew away. "Get back here, where is it going?" Realizing he couldn't catch alone, he rushed back inside, grabbing both Alfana and Maria. He apologized for the haste, asking them to help him out. Alfana, startled, quickly agreed. He then sprinted towards a balcony, leaving his streaming equipment behind. His phone, still mounted on its tripod, tumbled to the floor, the live feed capturing his frantic departure as his audience watched, bewildered. Across the world, viewers reacted with shock and confusion. Demons wondered if it was an accident. Royalty and commoners alike were urged to look outside at the insane spectacle. Students stared at their screens, questioning what could have surprised the streamer so much, while others looked up at the sky in disbelief. Strange light in the sky elicited varied responses. The assassin mirror looked up, stunned by the sight. The demon lord Shrosa found it both beautiful and unsettling. In a dimly lit room, Kana watched, remarking on how frightening and fleeting the phenomenon was. Stepping out onto the balcony, Kanata and the two women gazed up at the source of the commotion, a vast, shimmering curtain of light painting the night sky. Alfana recognized it, explaining that it was like an aurora. Maria, unfamiliar with the term, could only ask what that was. She held the now Domana orb in her hands, a thought beginning to form. The orb, its powers seemingly spent, slipped from a grasp and fell as the aurora continued to dance over the city rooftops, then voiced the realization that was dawning on everyone. The overflowing mana hadn't just disappeared. It had poured out of the orb to perform a miracle. This aurora, she declared, was not limited to one country, but it spread to others, serving as undeniable proof of the streamer's infinite mana. Her words resonated with the public, who now saw the event not as an accident, but as a divine miracle. They began to wonder if the streamer was some kind of divine messenger. However, in their awe, they overlooked one crucial point. The king and his advisors, however, did not miss it, as the sky returned to normal. The king noted with alarm that in their world of ataraxia, auroras were a phenomenon that simply did not exist. He concluded that they couldn't possibly win against the streamer, who had, in short, completely messed up the natural order, the demon realm. The reaction is split. Prince Aguila collapses in despair, clutching a device and muttering that it's all lies, convinced the streamer has stolen mana from slaves. He pleads for help, believing they shouldn't fight a god. In stark contrast, Lady Shrusa and her attendant Kikiki raised their arms in triumph, declaring that the spectacle was entirely worth it. The sentiment of awe echoes far and wide. The populace is utterly convinced that the night sky was purposefully crafted by the streamer. They hail him as a being who can control the heavens, a supreme ruler of the skies. To them, the beautiful display was a one-night miracle, an event so profound it could make one faint from sheer wonder. This fervent adoration is directed at a bewildered Kanata. Alfana, Maria, and even the young assassin, Mira, now look upon him with intense devotion. Alfana and Maria pledge to follow Lord Streamer for the rest of their days. Kanata, holding his own device, can only sweat in disbelief, thinking to himself that they are overreacting quite a bit. Throughout the capital, the excitement is palpable. Citizens wave flags bearing the streamer's symbol, eagerly wondering if he will broadcast again today. The king, standing beside a noblewoman, observes the scene with a placid smile. He remarks that he is glad to have lived long enough to witness such a thing, as the aurora was like a divine miracle, marking the birth of a new legend. Even in the demon lands, the news has spread. A three-eyed demon asks a goat-headed companion if they are tuning in as well. The goat-headed demon confirms, finding the streamer's supposed infinite mana to be interesting and hoping he might visit their country one day. Back in his room, Kanata rests his chin on his hands with a weary smile. He reflects on his sudden rise to fame, thinking to himself that becoming this popular is quite an honor. But his thought trails off, hinting at the immense pressure that comes with it. His exhaustion is profound. He hasn't been getting any sleep due to the constant travel between the capital's student dorms and Maria's estate. As he tries to rest, his peace is shattered by the excited shouts of students just outside his window, marveling at how the streamer's divine miracle lit up the sky and begging him not to deprive them of sleep during their breaks. Later, while walking through the school, he sees Maria excitedly showing another student her device. She points out the phenomenon, calling it an aurora. Overhearing this, Kanata is struck with a sudden realization, wondering why they are all crediting him for it. He puzzles over the term divine miracle, recalling that in his past life, auroras were known phenomenon that had been around since before the Common Era. The disconnect between his worlds is stark. Nearby, Mira is fast asleep on a bench, completely drained and unable to move, a testament to the exhaustion they both feel. The burden of this fame falls heavily on his companions. A crowd of students swarms Alfana and Maria, bombarding them with questions. They desperately want to know what Lord Streamer was like and what they discussed. Maria tries to push through the throng, insisting she has official business, but the students press closer, begging for any behind-the-scenes details. She looks out the school window, adjusting her glasses. With classes about to begin, she reflects on her debt to her friends, resolving to find a way to thank them properly. Waving to someone outside, she bids them farewell until the following week. Meanwhile, Kanata walks away from the crowd, thinking only of going home to rest. His departure incites Agila's fury, who loudly questions who Kanata, a mere commoner, thinks he is. Immediately, Maria and Mira snap back, telling him to be quiet and accusing him of simple jealousy. He pauses, realization dawning on him. Looking back at the fuming noble, Kanata understands that these very sentiments, this resentment from the aristocracy, were the root cause of the recent troubles. The narrative shifts to the resolution of the Rikba incident. Maria had explained that shortly after the stream, the royal knights located Rikba's home. They compelled him to confess his crimes and arrested him, though he was spared from exile. Before his imprisonment, whether from genuine remorse or because the consequences had utterly broken him, Rikba gave his entire fortune to his slaves. In that moment, prostrate on the floor, he had offered it all as a humble apology, declaring he had no need for wealth and prison. However, a flashback reveals the truth. An hour before the knight's arrival, Demon Lord Shrusa held Rikba's head in her hand. She mockingly praised his apology, explaining that her talented subordinates found a bug, like him, with ease. Noting his security was pathetic compared to the streamers. Returning to the present, Kanata walks alone, contemplating his next move. He decides he must urge his listeners to be more measured in their judgments to prevent such chaos from erupting again. He also mulls over the mixed reactions to his new hairstyle. As he walks, Alfana joins him. He sighs, admitting to her that he feels he was the cause of it all, and must be more careful with how he handles things from now on. Alfana greets him formally, noting his exhaustion, just as she points out that he also uses magic. Mira appears suddenly, her face inches from his. She whispers intently, asking if his earlier thoughts mean he is considering an end to his streaming. In response to her question, Kanata puts on a brave face, declaring that despite the recent unwanted attention, he will continue his streams as usual. He vows to make sure both he and his listeners can enjoy them, all while protecting his identity. Nearby, Alfana expresses her relief, admitting that she and Maria had been worried. Flustered by their concern, Kanata thanks them for the support and quickly departs. As he leaves, Alfana watches him with a thoughtful, intense expression. She muses that those two are too good to be mere friends with her, strengthening her resolve to support him even more from that moment on. Later, he returns to his room, announcing his arrival into the seemingly empty space, wondering where Mira could be. He dismisses the thought that she would be waiting for him, only to look down and find her prostrated on the floor. With her head bowed, she loudly asks how she might be of assistance. The shocking sight sends him stumbling backward onto his bed in alarm. From the floor, Mira simply looks up at him with a wide-eyed, questioning innocence. He demands that she go home, asking if she plans to become a stalker. In response, Mira leaps up cheerfully, announcing that she's retiring from her job as the assassin known as the Crow. When Kanata asks what she'll do for work, she explains that she simply wished to guard him. Her reasoning leaves him utterly baffled. He questions her logic aloud, wondering why she would say things that pique his curiosity. The absurd situation makes him briefly imagine his late father watching proudly from heaven. He tries to ignore her, turning his attention to a news feed on his monitor, which reports that the disappearance of Crow is being credited to the streamer. He silently hopes the situation doesn't escalate further, but Mira persists, pleading for him to let her become his official, publicly known bodyguard. At that very moment, Maria arrives home from her duties, looking weary but singularly focused on seeing Kanata. Spotting him down the hall, she calls out his name and begins to run towards him with excitement. Her joyful approach comes to an abrupt halt as she witnesses a shocking scene. Kanata is dragging Mira by the hand, calling her an unemployed weirdo. Unfazed, Mira proudly proclaims that he's mistaken and that, from this day on, she will be Lord Kanata's bodyguard. The word bodyguard makes Maria's expression darken with possessive anger. As Kanata tries to deny Myra's claim, Maria steps forward, her voice laced with intensity. She declares that if he likes smaller guards, then she would be the best choice. In the background, Alfana watches the confrontation unfold. Meanwhile, outside the school gates, Connor noticed the commotion. The noise was unusual, prompting her to wonder if Kanata was once again involved in helping someone. As she considered this, a mysterious, dark-skinned woman with pointed ears adjusted her sun hat, deciding to take a look for herself. This newcomer seemed to recognize Kana, identifying her as the saintess and priestess. Kana, for a part, mused that Kanata might be surprised by her unexpected visit. The woman approached and Kana, looking puzzled, asked if they had met before. The stranger simply stated that the flame war had been resolved. Back with Kanata, the situation had only escalated. Mira declared that she and Maria were already his bodyguards, much to Alfana's shock. This, however, was merely the beginning, as Kanata was once again becoming the center of everyone's attention. From an unknown vantage point, the figure known as Crow observed these developments. They acknowledged that the streamer would not stop moving forward. At the same time, Kanata reflected on his own progress, realizing that by starting to vlog, the possibilities before him were now infinite. He tried to block out the escalating argument between Maria and Alfana, covering his ears to avoid reality. Ignoring their bickering about manners and status, Canada resolved that he simply had to become even bigger to handle all. High above, in a celestial realm, an angelic figure watched over the scene with a joyful smile. She was the one guiding Kanata, blessing his future. The concept of reincarnation was a special one for him, and she was observing from heaven. She then cleared her throat, a hint of embarrassment on her face. The idea of heaven seemed to amuse her. The goddess admitted she had been watching him the entire time, finding his antics entertaining. She found him truly interesting, confessing she hadn't expected him to use the mana she gave him for streaming. Despite a particular line he used about the goddess, she was eagerly looking forward to his stream that night, revealing its shirt emblazoned with his face. Back on the ground, Kanata sighed in exhaustion. He announced to the assembled group of women, Maria, Alfana, Mira, and a newly arrived Kana in Mysterious Elf, that he was wiped and needed to go home to prepare. They all watched him depart. He turned to leave, prompting an immediate, unified outcry. Lord Kanata, Alfana, and the dark-skinned elf woman called out in unison. Kanata echoed Myra, the elven Princess Maria, and Kana, their voices a mixture of disbelief and desperation. Even the demon Lord Shrusa seemed taken aback by his sudden departure. Their calls turned into a frantic pursuit. He continued to walk away at a steady pace, but behind him, a chaotic scramble erupted as they all tried to catch up. Mira launched herself through the air while the dark-skinned elf ran so hard her hat flew from her head. Both Princess Alfana and the elf Maria reached for him, their expressions pleading as Kana stumbled, crawling desperately to keep pace. Seated on a bench before a large church, Kanata looks bewildered, pointing to himself as he processes a single question. His supporters? The building, Alfana, and Maria stand before him. Alfana explains that this is precisely why they brought him here, asking for his thoughts on matter. It over, concluding they essentially mean sponsors and followers. Alfana confirms this, adding that while it has been a week since the aurora, most people are still completely fixated on it. He collaborates that the court artists are already competing with one another to create his likeness. Maria chimes in with a wink, suggesting that while pictures are fine, tangible goods that people can hold and touch would be even better. The idea of merchandise catches Kanata by surprise, as he thought it would take much longer to reach this point. Alfana and Maria eagerly lean forward, declaring their intent to invest if he creates goods, explaining it's a way to expand belief in him, their Lord Streamer. He seems hesitant, asking if they're certain, considering their own duties. Reassure him, stating that it won't be on any official records and won't interfere with their work. They're content as long as he is the only one who knows. Touched by their sincerity, Kanata thinks how they are a breath of fresh air compared to his usual online world. He is momentarily overcome with emotion, wishing he could marry them both before dismissing the thought as impossible. Fortunate rejection. How he granted them permission. Their already intense devotion would have grown even stronger, and a dark fate might have befallen him. Turning to the present, Kanata walks with the two women, cheerfully wondering what kind of merchandise they should create first. As they agree it will be fun, he suddenly stops short, his eyes fixed on something ahead. Before them stands a massive statue of the goddess, now desecrated with at-shirt bearing Kanata's face. Alfana explains that it appeared this morning and they couldn't find the culprit. As Kanata expresses his shock, wondering who would do such a thing, Alfana internally declares victory. Maria watches them, a thoughtful expression on her face. He then offers a serene explanation, her eyes closed in contentment. Since the statue now features Lord Streamer, it should be fine. It is what they all agreed upon. A chill runs down, cannot his spine, as he silently questions the sanity of this church. Shuckled, explaining to her milord that he has fans in every corner, Alfana added that they were using magic to hide their identities from the onlookers. They spoke. Two of Maria's school friends approached, asking Canada who his companions were. Before he could answer, Alfana's eyes gleamed with an idea. She suggested that if the goddess herself had woven the message onto the defaced statue, it would be considered a divine oracle. Canada reacted with alarm, immediately shut down the notion, telling her not to make such jokes. Alfana quickly backtracked, claiming it was just a jest. Elsewhere, the production of merchandise continued, with one angelic figure proudly displaying a finished shirt, while her weary companion questioned how many more they had to create. Conversation to a close, Kanata suggested they stop for the day, noting it was still early. Alfana, however, informed him that she and Maria still had something to do. He asked what was up, guessing it was politically related and acknowledging the difficulties they must face, responded with a knowing, almost unsettling smile, simply telling her milor that he would understand soon. As she and Maria waved at cheerful goodbye, Kanata was left completely bewildered by her cryptic remark. Later, walking alone through a bustling part of the city he rarely visited, Canada found a change of scenery refreshing. His attention was drawn to a large crowd gathered in front of a particular store, and he wondered what was happening. Suddenly, his heart leaped into his throat as a girl appeared out of nowhere, casually munching on a snack. She pointed towards the shop, asking if he'd like to visit the new store that had just opened. He clutched his chest, startled by her abrupt arrival, recovered enough to scold her, calling her Mira and demanding to know how long she intended to lurk around. He reminded her of his instruction to find her own place. He then softened his tone, acknowledging that she had been a great help during the assassination attempt and had done well not to leak his identity. Mira looked up, surprised by his words, even gently admonished her, stating that being a stalker is bad. Mira, now sitting forlornly in a cardboard box, meekly agreed. Kanata observed that she didn't seem to want to return to her home country, but she insisted she would try to find a place of her own there. Resolve crumbled in an instant. With tears welling in her eyes, she looked up from the box and pleaded for him to pick her up. The police struck a chord with Kanata, who recalled his mother's warning about picking up strays. Despite being moved, he tried to steel himself, but Mira was already overwhelmed with emotion at his perceived kindness. He was walking through the city with Mira when he recognized a familiar building ahead. It was the brothel, Vinity, the establishment where Kana worked. Nearby, two men stared in their direction, exclaiming in shock at what they saw. The voice suddenly called out his name, and he turned to see Kana herself, greeting him warmly. Kanata was taken aback by the sudden encounter. She explained that even at noon, the place was bustling with customers, mostly adventurers and soldiers coming off their night shifts, a fact that Mira quietly observed. Friendly demeanor shifted as her gaze fell upon Mira. A spark of recognition passed between them, as Kana identified Mira as the person she had seen at the school 6 days prior. Myra's tense expression confirmed she remembered Kana as well. The air grew thick with unspoken tension, trapping a bewildered Canada between the two women as they continued their silent, intense standoff. Feeling the need to intervene, He physically nudged Mira forward, formally introducing her to Kana in an attempt to break the ice. The introduction seemed to clarify things for Kana, whose expression softened with understanding. She remarked that she now saw how things were, leaving Kanata completely confused as to what they were talking about. She led them inside to a lavishly decorated room, the opulence of which left both Kanata and Mira stunned. He reflected that this was a level of luxury he could never have experienced in his previous life, and immediately began to wonder about the immense cost. Just then, a cart laden with a feast was wheeled in. Kana casually mentioned she was about to have lunch and invited them to join her, noting their perfect timing. Overjoyed, Kanata and Mira eagerly raised their utensils, barely able to contain their excitement for the meal. After they had finished the magnificent meal, the plates lay empty. Kanata expressed his immense gratitude, admitting he could never imagine affording such high-class food on his own. He then asked Hana if she usually ate with others, and she confirmed that she often did with her co-workers. Her tone then shifted, becoming more direct as she leaned in close. She asked if he knew Princess Maria and Saintess Alfana. Startle cannot confirm that he did. Kana then revealed that she had recently shared a meal with the two of them, much to his surprise, as his followers finally began to connect with one another. Over a meal, Kanata asked Kanata and Miro when they met. Kanata explains that after dealing with a troublesome noble, some royal knights were stationed at her establishment. She and Miro bonded, had dinner, and even discussed Kanata. With a confident smile, she reveals that this led to a business relationship with the royalty, all while Kanata sips his drink, absorbing the information. Declares her intention to create a group to support him as a streamer. The revelation causes Kanata to spit his drink directly in Amira's face in shock. Kanata, oblivious, asks what's wrong, casually mentioning that while it's not official, she's now member number 3. Mira remains stoic, a trickle of water running down her cheek. Cameras asking Kana to wait and questioning the talk of a fan club. A brief memory surfaces of Alfana, excitedly telling Kana about making merchandise. Back in the present, Kana confirms it, her expression softening as she reaches a hand toward Kanata. She confesses that his words saved her, declaring him the most important being in the world to her. Mera, calmly wiping her face, explains that she overslept and missed the meeting, which is why she was unaware of the plan. Kanata looks on, utterly bewildered, as Mera resumes eating with gusto. He weakly agrees and excuses himself to wash his hands, walking away unsteadily. Far? Kana grabs him, pulling him close with a suggestive look. She leans in and whispers, asking if you want her to be his first. Kanata recoils in shock, thinking it's far too soon. Kana then pulls back with a playful wink, revealing she was only joking. Time later, the trio departs from the establishment. They thank Kana for the meal and she invites them to return any time. Kanata reflects that their time together, though brief, was enjoyable. Wonders what to do with the rest of his day off. He notices Mira has vanished, guessing she must be looking for a house. Just then, a hooded figure appears before him and Kana under the night sky. The figure greets them and introduces herself as Alfana, the founder of the streamer support group. A nearby church, the hooded Alfana discusses matters with Kana, who find her formal tone unusual. Alfana states that the meeting's theme is to create an environment for the streamer to grow. For now, she explains they only need members who are already in the know. As she speaks, a swirling vortex of dark energy forms behind her, catching her attention. Energy coalesces into a shadowy figure that lunges forward. Alfana reacts instantly, erecting a defensive barrier of dark energy as she demands to know who is there. She realizes with alarm that her attacker is no ordinary foe to have infiltrated her full power spell. Cataway assailant is suddenly intercepted by a flash of movement. Mira appears, striking the figure down with a decisive blow. As Kana watches in shock, Alfana quietly wonders if this is an entrance exam, a test to see if she is strong enough to protect him, is interrupted by two new arrivals. A small girl with dark hair steps forward, boldly announcing her desire to join and revealing herself as a former assassin. Beside her, a figure cloaked in a light-toned robe meekly makes the same request, claiming to be just a normal demon. Sudden appearance draws varied reactions. Lady Shrusa's lips curl into an intrigued smile. The young assassin, Mira, seemed surprised that there were others besides herself. Kana and Alfana, however, recognized the two from an encounter at the school, with Kana noting that since one is a saintess, they are likely allies. No demon accepts their inclusion, her voice firm as she agrees. Lowering her hood to reveal a determined young face, she expresses her eagerness to work with them all, her purpose absolute. Everything is for Lord Streamer. This declaration solidifies their pact, as multiple hands join in a unified symbolic gesture of allegiance. Elsewhere, unseen observers take note. An angelic figure remarks that things have become even more interesting, musing with Lady Shrusa that Streamer becomes famous. 2 would be a fitting title for this new chapter. Far away, completely oblivious to the fanatical following he is gathering, Canada soaks in a hot bath, enjoying a great day off. During a live stream, a viewer asks Kanata if he likes beautiful girls such as the princess and the saintess. He enthusiastically confirms that he does, lamenting that if such beauty were by his side, he'd be a happy man. This declaration sends his audience of self-proclaimed fellow, single men into an uproar, accusing him of betrayal. Meanwhile, at the academy, both Princess Alfana and the elven Lady Maria are absent, reportedly due to fevers. In their separate quarters, they both overhear Kanata's broadcasted confession, reacting with stun, blushing silence to the news that they are his type. Combat training begins for the remaining students. A teacher explains the rules. The uniforms they wear are enchanted to block outside magic, and the badges on their chest will break if they receive what would otherwise be a fatal wound. The objective, he clarifies, is to break the opponent's badge. Match pits a sneering student against a large, bald classmate. The bout is over in an instant. The muscular student shatters his opponent's badge with a single contemptuous strike, declaring the displayed pathetic as he crushes the broken emblem in his hand. After he's secured, the bald student immediately turns his attention to Kanata, believing he can act with impunity while Alfana is away. He mockingly challenges the peasant to a fight. The crowd murmurs, but Kanata calmly accepts. The creature signals the start. The challenger wastes no time, unleashing a powerful torrent of fire. The spell screams towards Kanata, but just as it's about to make contact, it vanishes completely, much to the attacker's shock. Reveals that he erected a magical wall, a defensive technique he recalled from reading fantasy manga in his past life. Though he was anxious about testing it, the successful defense confirms his talent. With a confident look, he announces that it is now his turn. Simple two-finger gesture, Kanata unleashes a focused blast of power. The attack strikes his opponent's chest with pinpoint accuracy, instantly shattering the protective badge into a shower of fragments. Muscular student collapses, his uniform singed, but his body unharmed. A testament to Canada's amazing control. The teacher observes, frustrated that the established norm of noble superiority persists despite such displays. From the sidelines, Aguila watches with a disdainful expression. Canada, however, feels secure, believing he'll be fine as long as he has Maria and Alfana. Match concluded, Kanata walks off only to be stopped by Aguila in his entourage, which includes the two students who just fought. Aguila notes Kanata's spare uniform and coldly informs him, "You're coming with us." Kanata looks on in alarm as the group closes in, stands silently as Aguila, enraged, strikes his own bald-headed follower for speaking out of turn, reminding the boy that he'd already lost to Kanata. Aguila then turns his attention back to Kanata, menacingly asking if he'd like a demonstration of his power. Nearby, Maria and her friend attempt to leave, calling Aguila a coward, unfazed by the tension. Kanata simply thinks to himself that since something good has finally happened, he should just head home. As he contemplates leaving, the world suddenly halts. Aguila and his followers are frozen mid-sneer, their movements suspended in time. Kanata, however, is unaffected. He looks around the silent classroom, a wave of confusion washing over him as he realizes everyone is completely still. Willadament deepens when he sees a white dove flutter past the window, the only other object in motion. As he watches it go, A serene voice speaks from directly behind him, remarking how rude it is for lowly humans to dare touch him, declaring such an act of sin. He turns to see a towering angelic figure, flanked by other celestial beings. She explains that even if they are inferior, those who follow him are different. Canada stares, a flicker of recognition in his eyes as he tries to place her voice. His gaze then drops to her shirt, which inexplicably features an image of his streamer persona. The angel's gentle expression hardens as she glances at the frozen students. She states that before they celebrate their first meeting, she must deal with these fools whom she cannot forgive. With cold resolve, she announces her intention to erase them. For judgment passed, a sharp pop echoes through the silent room. The angelic figure gives a cheerful, winking smile. Canada, now inexplicably shirtless, can only stare in utter shock, his mind reeling from the impossible sight of his own streamer identity emblazoned across her chest. With a cheerful expression and a series of popping sounds, the angelic figure announces that this is a pain, and she will handle the rest in one go. Below, Canada stares in disbelief at the now empty space where his classmates stood, utterly confused about what just happened and why she would do such a thing. He points an accusing finger at her, his voice filled with dawning horror as he declares that she is the one who brought him to this world 17 years ago. The goddess calmly confirms his accusation. The realization hits him fully. This was the being he had mentally berated. He has so many questions, but his immediate instinct is to suppress them. Ask what she means as she elaborates on her philosophy. She explains that even if someone disappears, a new one will simply replace them. Seated gracefully, she continues, stating that even if the entire world were destroyed, it would be remade, and everything would return to normal, an easy solution in her eyes. Kanata is appalled by her casual disregard for existence. Towards that, her ability to simply stop time makes her a terrifying monster, not a goddess. He argues that while he has people he dislikes, he never considered just getting rid of them. The goddess counters that being liked by everyone is an impossible task. She declares that her method of dealing with people is simply her own form of humanity and her way of life. She continues, noting that some of his followers are extreme, which didn't help her case. But now she understands why he tries to interact with the noble students, with a knowing wink. She says she now sees the type of person he truly is, leaving Kanata to nervously ask what she plans to do next. Response: she pulls him into a gentle embrace, telling him not to worry. She clarifies that her earlier statements were merely hypothetical. She only wanted to confirm how he would react. Kanata is left flustered and wide-eyed by the sudden physical contact, her back slightly, stammering as he questions why a goddess would wear such modern-looking clothes. She proudly explains that she made them herself and even put them on her own statue in the church. The biggest revelation follows. She is his oldest fan, a listener, who has been observing his live streams since the very beginning. Kanata is struck completely, reminisces that he wasn't very passionate back then. Even recalling a time, she left his few listeners to go wash their hands. Kanata explodes, shouting that she shouldn't say such things so confidently. He clutches his head, limiting the state of the world. She retorts that if a goddess like her is strange, then the world itself must be strange, prompting a hasty apology from Kanata. James genuinely touched, remarking that this is the first time someone has commented on her clothes in that way. Kanata, however, is having an internal meltdown, realizing that both her clothes and her common sense are completely off. His mind drifts to the mass-produced shirts he saw yesterday, wishing he had a couple. The goddess asks what's wrong, offering him her clothes, an offer he vehemently refuses. Stardust begins to float upwards, explaining that today was an exception, and she normally cannot interact with him so directly. Her prolonged presence in this realm risks destroying its very balance and concepts, a tremendous pressure for her to bear. As she starts to fade, she casually mentions that her friends have been talking about him lately, leaving Kanata stunned as he watches her disappear. Reaches out as the goddess's form grows ever more translucent. She declares that she is now bound by a new purpose, to gain more fans than he ever could. All he can do is cry out her name as she fades from his reality. The final cheerful wave and a simple "see-ya," she vanishes completely. A brilliant flash of light consumes his vision, and in the next instant he is thrust back into the familiar chaos of his classroom as a nearby student screams. Starring return leaves him sweating and disoriented, his mind reeling. He can only come to one conclusion. This world is completely insane. 3 days pass, but the memory of the encounter remains as vivid as ever. Shots are shattered by commotion. Aguila and his 2 followers are on the classroom floor, writhing and apologizing frantically. The prince screams for the agony to stop, crying out that his body feels as if it's being torn apart while a teacher looks on, utterly baffled. Watching the bizarre spectacle, Kanata wonders of the sudden drastic change in their attitudes. They won't even look at him now. Elsewhere in her own realm, the goddess observes the scene on a monitor. She muses that things have been tiring on her end, and that doing this now feels like a duty. Quietude is broken by the appearance of second figure, a dark-clothed version of herself with a stern expression. This newcomer asks if she is looking at that world again. The angelic goddess, lounging comfortably, confirms that it is, of course, her very reason for living. The dark-cloth goddess reveals the terrifying truth behind the events. She explains that when Kanata worried he had gone too far with the nobles, she simply erased the things she didn't like and remade them, admitting she was completely serious. This immense power, she concludes, stems from simple fact. She does not understand people. In a flash of searing energy, the muscular demon subordinate is engulfed by a powerful attack. Lady Shrusa declares that his desire will die with him, but as the light fades, she realizes he's vanished. She grits her teeth in frustration, recognizing the signature of light magic and realizing he got away. Chest, she grimly states that the human realm is in danger. Her small, winged, familiar checks on her well-being, and after confirming she is safe, she gives a stern order. Call for Lucia immediately. Elsewhere, in a peaceful courtyard, Canada sits alone, wondering if the goddess will visit again. He muses that his memories of his reincarnation are fuzzy, so he doesn't truly know how different she is now. Reflection is shattered as Alfana and Maria suddenly press themselves against either side of him. Flustered, he asks why they are so close, and they both reply that they believe this is normal for friends. It seems that ever since they returned, the two have been relentlessly affectionate, even chasing him around grounds. Alfana, catching her breath, exclaims that she has time she needs to make up for with him, leaving Kanata to wonder if this behavior is truly normal in this world. Alfana proudly presents a sample of new merchandise, a badge featuring Kanata's streamer avatar. She reports that they should finish production even before the clothing line is ready. Kanata looks on in shock, realizing his outfit will become widely known. A promotional image shows Kanata modeling the new look with a badge attached to a bag. Alfana adds that they made 2 types, and Kanata can only hope that not too many fakes will be made. It makes them happy to know they trust him so much. In response, Alfana and Maria lean in with intense expressions, declaring that no lowlife could ever hope to replicate his charisma. Alfana then excuses herself for official duties, promising to see him the next day. As the group says their goodbyes, Mira suddenly appears behind Kanata, startling him. He whirls around, asking why she's there and questioning if she used a spell. Put the pieces together, realizing she must be the 4th supporter. He muses that a lady from a different race has joined them, though they never asked about her origins. Alfana and Mira stand together, and Alfana remarks that in the end, they are all the same. Mira quietly asks if that is a good thing. Kanata admits to himself that he honestly didn't expect the legendary crow to be one of his supporters. Mira sits quietly on a nearby bench. Canada wonders aloud why his warding spell isn't working. Alfana provides a simple explanation. Mira has enough power to oppose his mana, and that's all there is to it. Considers this, then asks if it means Mira is weaker than her. With a strained but immediate smile, Alfana confirms that yes, that is the case. She clarifies that it's a matter of simple opposition, not negation. Elaborates, explaining that the reason her own spell is so effective throughout the school and town is that no one sees the saintess as an enemy. However, she cautions that Myra's mana is far from average, and her stealth and combat skills are particularly noteworthy. Hearing this, Kanata realizes he probably shouldn't rely on his warding spell too much. Sometime later, Maria mentions to Alfana that her family has been wanting to meet her. Overhearing, Kanata asks Alfana if she is familiar with Maria's family. Alfana admits she isn't, aside from knowing her parents are the king and queen. A brief memory shows Maria with her royal parents and two younger siblings. The realization dawns on Kanata that he needs to thank them for their help, and he resolves to think of something to do for them, recalling how he'd found himself sleeping between the two girls just yesterday. She assures Alfana that he intends to offer her the same support eventually, but she replies that his sentiment alone is wonderful enough. Nearby, Mira watches them, her expression firm and resolute. Meanwhile, at an interspecies meeting in the capital, the demon lord Shrausa addresses the attendees at her desk. She apologizes for the delay and announces her plan to answer letters sent by the populace. The king immediately objects, stating that while he and the others also liked the streamer, bringing such personal interest into an official meeting is inappropriate. His concern is met with excitement from others at the table. As the king clutches his head in worry, another attendee cheers, excitedly claiming that the first letter from the king who loves vegetables is his. Truza, however, is consumed by her own frustrations. She laments that the meeting is supposed to last for several days, preventing her from hunting Liga. She clenches her fist, resolving to do her best while counting on someone named Lucia to handle things in her absence. Back in his room, Kanata is streaming when a message appears from a viewer who claims to have donated money to support him. He stares at the screen in shock, recognizing the name as the scammer from before. Behind him, his supporters realize they may have been too hasty in swearing to handle such matters without his knowledge. His supporters react with immediate concern. Kana wonders aloud why children are donating, while Alfana warns everyone to ignore suspicious people, and states she doesn't accept donations during streams. Maria decides to investigate and abruptly ends the broadcast. As Kanata wonders what is happening, a masked figure presses against his window. It is Mira, his bodyguard, announcing her arrival and causing him to recoil in terror. The issue of the fraudulent donations has escalated to the highest levels. At the meeting, the king pleads with an exhausted Shrausa, explaining that they are too distracted by the scammer to focus on the agenda. Shrausa considers the widespread chaos such scams could cause. Acknowledging that demons are specialists at tracking people, she proposes a deal to King Ataraxes. She will find a culprit in one day if he lends his assistance. King's face burns with passion at the opportunity. Shrausa sees this as a perfect chance to test the demon's wish for friendly terms with humans and vows not to forgive those using her name for fraud. Beside her, a powerfully transformed demon roars his intent to capture Liga and restore peace to the human realm, signaling a new, unexpected cooperation between the two races. Under the light of a full moon, a man named Max, a normal citizen, cackles with glee as he pours a bag of coins onto a table. He can't believe how much money he's received for doing so little. All he did was act like he knew the famous streamer, and the donations poured in without question. He revels in the bliss of his successful scam. Cracked communication device, his early relation replaced by a troubled expression. He rationalizes that all the time he spent stealing and shoplifting can be undone now that he has a way to earn money. He tells himself it isn't even a scam. If he donates a single coin from the bag back to the streamer, it technically counts as using the money for support. Suddenly, a sharp knock echoes through his dilapidated room. Startled, Max wonders if the stream is already over. A cloaked figure stands in his doorway, asking if he is Max. He stares, wide-eyed and shocked by the unexpected visitor, throws back her hood, revealing a stunningly beautiful woman with long, dark hair and pointed ears. Max is completely taken aback, unable to comprehend how such a beauty could exist in this country. As he stumbles backward in disbelief, she offers a playful, knowing smile, closes the distance, her voice a seductive whisper. She teases him, asking if he fell for her smile earlier and followed her. Flustered and blushing, Max finds himself cornered as she leans in, her face inches from his, asking if he's excited and what he plans to do with her. Sammer's completely captivated. She tells him she can't get enough of his husky voice. As he tries to guess what she wants, his lips, his body, his love, she leans in to whisper directly in his ear, interrupting him with a single chilling desire. I want it. Your heart. Blurring facade shatters. With a vicious grin, she plunges her hand deep into Max's chest. Blood erupts as she mockingly asks him to donate to her, reminding him that he took from Lord Streamer's fans. She declares that what was taken from him should now be taken from him. Max can only scream in agony. Kanata observes the scene, his expression serious. He notes that the air is too sweet, making him feel as if he might lose himself. The woman, now revealed to have small demonic horns, stands over the fallen Max and addresses Kanata, asking how her skillful method differed from that of Night. Casually beside the unconscious body, a smug look on her face. Kanata asks if she really killed him. She scoffs, calling the idea stupid. She explains that she simply lured him and put him to sleep. In other words, he's seeing a dream where she's slowly dragging out his heart. Demonic nature is revealed as large bat-like wings unfurl behind her. Kanata understands, remarking that this must be how succubi fight. He admits he thought a demon would be more violent, musing that Lord Streamer would have wished for a peaceful resolution. The succubus cheerfully agrees. Alcubus explains that the demons are already trying to adapt to Lord Streamer's ideals, becoming good fans. She adds that Lord Shrusa herself has instructed them to avoid unnecessary conflict. Response. Kanata thanks the succubus for her help and suggests they work together again if they meet. As she departs, leaving the unconscious scammer on the ground, Akuta arrives in full armor, asking if Kanata found his target. Kanata confirms, and they prepare to leave. Elsewhere, the demon lord, Lady Shrusa, contemplates her connection to Lord Streamer. She reflects that powerful demons like herself can perceive the mana of others, meaning she could easily identify him. However, she states that their pride is as fans prevents them from doing so, and she eagerly awaits a coincidental meeting one day. Her thoughts shift to more immediate concerns. While she has already dealt with the scammer, the main issue remains. They have yet to find a rogue demon Liga. She recalls that he was searched away to hide his own mana and then began a rebellion. The entire Demon Lord's army is searching for him, as his actions in a human realm could shatter the fragile peace forge between her and Lord Streamer. Sighs, noting that Liga sustained severe injuries and will be unable to fight for some time, making this the ideal window to capture him. As she considers this, a hand presents her with a message, furling the paper. She reads the message from Lucia. It informs her that Lucia is currently in a meeting within the capital and cannot leave. Shrusa elaborates that Lucia has compiled a list of every settlement in Ataraxis under the pretext of capturing the scammer and requests that Shrusa also conduct a search. Enraged by the implication, Shrusa crushes the letter in her fist, declaring that she can protect the capital on her own. Lucas returns to Kanata, who is now with Mira. He acknowledges that, as a result of the recent incident, countermeasures against such crimes are being strengthened in every country. Unseen by them, on a nearby rooftop, the assassin Crow stands beside the injured demon Liga, observing that someone else has already reached their target location. Vera, however, is focused on her own objective. With a determined blush, she clenches her fist, resolving that next time she will act as Kanata's personal bodyguard, apprehend the criminal herself, and earn a pat on the head as a reward. For thoughts were heard, Kanata pats her on the head, thanking her for being a great help, even though she wasn't his bodyguard. He then asks Mira if she could assist him with an experiment, explaining his plans to move to a new stage as a streamer. Flustered, Mira processes his request as Kanata excuses himself, promising to return for her thoughts. She agrees to her participation and promptly shuts the door, beginning the experiment. Moments later, Mira collapses to the floor, her hands pressed against the ground as she pants heavily. Her face is flushed, and she struggles to catch a breath. That was a close call, she thinks, realizing that even for a former assassin, this experience was something entirely different. Continues to tremble on the floor, recognizing the sensation as dangerous. She had almost lost her composure entirely in front of him. Nearby, Kanata examines his hand, which seems to have a faint aura around it. He wonders aloud if the experiment worked, hoping that she liked it. With a recent scamming incident concluded, the king, accompanied by a beaming Alfana, formally addresses Kanata. He identifies him as the streamer and expresses that it is an honor to finally meet him. The king chuckles, remarking that the brief meeting was well worth it. He then turns his attention to the masked figure of Kanata, noting that he heard he was awake until 4 a.m. In the background, 2 young children jump with excitement next to Alfana. Proceed. Kanata is suddenly confronted by the sight of a grand, imposing structure. He stares in awe, wondering what this place is, while a nervous Alfana stammers that the honor is all hers. At vantage point, Alfana gazes into a vast hall where her parents, the king and queen, are seated, awaiting their arrival. Explains his intentions to Kanata, stating that as the saintess, he could not let the incident pass. He decided the best way to thank Maria was by meeting her little siblings. Internally, Kanata panics, admitting to himself that he never expected to meet the king in person. Himself seated between Kana and Alfana, silently questioning why they always position themselves so close. Kana leans in to whisper that Alfana is right, and that he doesn't need to be so formal, at least not in this setting. Finally, the 2 royal children rush forward, pleading to speak with him. The king tries to apologize for their outburst, but they shout that it's unfair. Alfana watches the chaotic scene with a fond smile, murmuring her affection for her father. Nada asks if they're Maria's siblings. They eagerly confirm. The boy proudly introduces himself as ours, while the girl, after biting her tongue in her excitement, shyly says her name is fine, smiles at them, complimenting their names. Reaching out, Kanata gently pats both ours and Fine on the head, much to their surprise and delight. King laughs, assuring Kanata that the gesture is fine. The children then make a request for him to perform the introduction from his streams. Obliging, Kanata clears his throat and prepares to begin as the 2 children watch in anticipation. His performance, launching into his signature opening for his 2 biggest fans. The effect on the royal children, ours and Fian, is immediate and profound. They stare in wide-eyed wonder, completely captivated by the streamer's energy. Dazzling light of his persona washes over the entire throne room. The king and queen physically recoil from the overwhelming display. Maria, however, remains composed, observing the chaos with grim satisfaction. She internally notes that while the castle resident's mental fortitude is strong enough to withstand him for now, it will be some time before they can form a proper support group. Deciding the demonstration is over, she tells Kanata it's time to go to her room. Following her lead, they relocate to a more private chamber. Kanata removes his warm jacket, breathing a sigh of relief. He tells the still awestruck children that he was simply returning the favor for their support. Meanwhile, outside the castle walls, a different kind of excitement builds. A massive crowd, including the adventurers Akuta and Zeus, gathers in the city streets for the release of limited edition goods, exclusive to only 3 countries. The demand is so overwhelming that a standard release is postponed. Instead, an advanced sales lottery is announced, with postcard from the Kingdom of Raghus, the Principality of Bandai, and the Demon World as the prizes, attracting far too many customers. The sheer volume of applications creates a logistical nightmare. Kana and Lady Shrusa find themselves buried under a mountain of postcards, with Shrusa lamenting that they hadn't called upon enough help from the church, the royal knights, and the demons to ensure a fair lottery. Back in the castle, the conversation turns to the potential fallout. Maria explains to Kanata and Fian that if the recent scamming incident hadn't been resolved so quickly, the entire merchandise sale would have been put on hold, causing immense trouble. Kanata swallows nervously, realizing they would have been deep in debt. She elaborates, explaining her fear that with so many troublesome fans, canceling the sale would have sparked a riot. An image of that exact scenario flashes through her mind. a furious mob demanding their merchandise while she, Kana, and Lady Shrouds struggle to hold them back. From a nearby window, Kanata watches the real event begin, hoping the documents he provided will prove useful. To prevent such chaos, firm measures are taken at the sales venue. A woman from the church, a cross on her forehead, takes charge with a megaphone. She instructs the crowd to line up properly to avoid injury, warning that any troublemakers will be forcefully removed. Beside her, Akuta echoes the command. A notice reveals that sales in the demon world are on hold until Lega is caught, prompting a furious hunt for the demon. With the crowd under control, she gives the final order. The shutters of the sales counter fly open as she announces that sales are now officially open. The fruits of Kanata's labor arrive in massive quantities. Boxes are stacked high, and messages from devoted fans pour in, expressing their long-awaited excitement. One fan proclaims they wrote 1,000 postcards, hitting the jackpot for their entire family, while another calls their father the best for securing the goods. Witnessing this overwhelming response, Zeus can only stare in disbelief, muttering that it's unbelievable. Kana, Rebecca, and Alfana, however, are delighted admiring the merchandise they've acquired for themselves. Kana remarks that getting a reward for yourself feels very satisfying, turns her gaze towards Kanata, who is standing on a balcony overlooking the scene. With a soft smile, she acknowledges the scale of his influence, realizing that this is his true power. She wonders if people truly desire what he offers so intensely. Approaching him from behind, she gets unnervingly close and whispers his name. She asks him about the previous night, stating that it seems he and Mira did something amazing together for the very first time. Her suspicion stems from an earlier conversation. She recalls Mira arriving at the castle that morning, boasting to her and a mate about the event before she left. Her eyes narrow, her expression hardening as she presses Canada for confirmation. She demands to know if what Mira claimed is true. He stammers, caught off guard by the question, but confirms that it was indeed the first time. Alfana's thoughts twist his answer. She muses that Mira should have told her to keep it a secret, implying a clandestine affair. Her misunderstanding deepens into self-doubt. With tears welling in her eyes, she wonders aloud if she wasn't good enough. Kanata, seeing her distress but not understanding its cause, tries to reassure her, explaining that he did his best for her sake, and that his power is equal to, if not greater than, Myris. His words fail to calm her. Her jealousy erupts, her face contorting into a menacing grin as she grabs him. She demands he explain what Mira meant when she boasted about the sweet whispers he gave her in his bedroom. Kanata can only look on in terror, realizing he is in mortal danger. Inside a lavish room, Kanata is confronted by Alfana and Maria. They demand to know if what Mira said about him and are doing something together the previous night is true. He confirms their suspicion, clarifying they were basically allies. Explanation does little to soothe them. Alfana and Maria erupt, demanding to know why he and Mira are so bothered by their reaction. Their true grievance becomes clear as they shout in unison. It's because they weren't included. Faced with their outburst, Kanata can only offer a weak apology. Tries to placate them with a desperate offer, suggesting he will do the same with them so they can forgive him. The proposal hangs in the air, and both girls are left speechless by the sudden proposition. Kanata is the first to recover, admitting she doesn't like not being first but agrees to the arrangement. Maria quickly concurs, adding that compatibility is important, and it's not as if Mira is the most suitable partner anyway. Seeing their acceptance, a flustered Kanata tells them to come to his room later that night, promising to get ready. As they leave, he thanks them. As they depart, Kanata waves with a confident smile, privately thinking his sales pitch is going well. He then remembers a crucial detail: all of his tools are back at the dorm. Preparing for the evening's encounter, Maria and Alfana soak in a hot bath. Maria suggests they should get out, but Alfana insists they must be as clean as possible to be in their best form. A dark thought crosses Alfana's mind. If Kanata is using tools, she wonders if they could even stand a chance against an assassin like Mira. She shakes off the dark thought, grabbing Maria's hands to bolster her courage. Alfana declares there is nothing to be afraid of, and that they should march forth together. Maria, her own resolve hardening, agrees that they must take the initiative. Resolve solidified, the two stand together, now fully dressed. Though their hands tremble with nervousness, they share a look of mutual understanding and agreement before making their way to his room. Their arrival, Kanata greets them with unexpected energy. He strikes a dynamic pose, announcing that it's time to begin the ASMR experiments and that he's going to get a lot of data thanks to them. Stunned, the two girls can only stare in confusion. Who is already present voices their shared bewilderment, asking what is going on. Canada explains that as a streamer, he wanted to test out some new content. The angelic figure, observing from above, clarifies for herself that according to his past life, ASMR means autonomous sensory meridian response, noting that he has once again thought of something interesting. Explains his plan to use magic to distort his microphone's output, creating a voice that sends tingling sensations directly into the listener's brains. Mira, aghast, clasps her cheeks and questions if this is some form of sound-based attack. Reaction prompts him to clarify his reasoning. He recalls that a while ago both Maria and Alfana had complimented his voice, which sparked the idea for this experiment. Now, composed, Mira accepts the situation, agreeing to participate as his bodyguard. The test. He asked Myra for her terminal's identification number, which she provides without hesitation. From his desk, Kanata announces he will start a private stream, just for her. Mira, surprised, asks if such a thing is possible. Experiment commences. Kanata mutters that the initial result isn't quite what he wanted, but apologizes to the girls for the delay, admitting he's been eager for this, too. Deciding the first tests are insufficient, he resolves to modify the signal even further, unleashing a powerful wave of energy that causes Mira to cry out in astonishment. The amplified effect leaves all three girls reeling. Alfana describes the sensation as his voice reaching directly into her brain, finding it frightening. Maria agrees, confessing that if she listened any longer, she feels she would go insane. Mira can only stammer that it was something like that. Despite their clear distress, Kanata grins, apologizing but insisting it's for data. He urges them to endure it for just a little longer as the three girls are overcome by the intense, overwhelming sensations. His test subjects collapsed on the bed behind him. He strokes his chin, musing to himself. He admits he doesn't know much about ASMR, but recalls that things like eating sounds or sweet whispers are supposed to be popular. He observes their prone forms, noting that their reactions are quite good. He reflects on his original goal for developing this technology to make everyone happier. But the current scene suggests a far more potent and perhaps different outcome. He then approaches the bed and leans over the exhausted Alfana, asking if there is anything she wants to say. Weakly, she asks if it can be anything at all, and he confirms that it can. Looking up at him with a dazed expression, she simply breathes his name. Kanata smiles warmly, thanking her for helping and going along with his experiment. He clears his throat, holding up a script he prepared for the previous day. With a determined look, he instructs the girls to recite the words he has written. He then begins the next phase of the experiment, speaking their names directly into his terminal. Maria, Alfana, Mira. The three girls look up, their attention immediately captured by his voice. Voice sends a shockwave of sensation through them. Alfana, blushing profusely, screams that she will live only for him from now on. Mira, equally affected, admits that she needs him in her life. Watching their intense reactions, Kanata privately questions if these words are truly motivating, concluding that while the pleasure aspect is appealing, the technique requires significant refinement. Still reeling from the experience, Alfana and Maria cling to one another. They eagerly propose making this a long-term project, pointing out that he will surely need much more data. From a background, Kanata agrees with their assessment, thanking them for their cooperation. The experiment concluded, he walks away with Alfana and Maria, realizing that viable ASMR streams are still a distant goal. Once they are a safe distance away, Maria checks to ensure they are alone. Alfana, completely drained, confirms it and confesses that she is at her absolute limit, unable to even muster the energy for a simple barrier. Her strength gives out, and both she and Maria collapse to the ground, trembling from the lingering sensations. Maria reflects on the experience, a power both terrifying and wonderful. She questions whether it's safe to release upon the world, concluding it would be best if they kept it to themselves for a little longer. Meanwhile, in his hometown, Kanata speaks with a local woman. She asks if he is doing well, and he admits that while his merchandise didn't sell as much as he'd hoped, he earned enough to send some money home to his parents without arousing suspicion. This peace is destined to be shattered. In just a few days, a powerful demon will attack his hometown. The scene flashes forward to chaos. Villagers flee in terror from a monstrous, spiky appendage as Kanata and his party fight desperately against the unseen threat. In a sun-drained field, a tall, well-built woman named Mesa wipes sweat from a brow, leaning on her tool after a hard day's work. Her gaze falls upon a traveler she recognizes. Nearby, the traveler, a young man named Liga, greets her warmly, admitting with a chuckle that he's terrible with names before reintroducing himself. Later, sitting with his arm in a sling, he asks Mesa about her own injuries, expressing his belief that they should all be healed by that night. He reflects on their recent past, recalling with an embarrassed laugh how they were nearly killed on a mountain near the village just a few days prior. Expression softens with sincerity. He confesses that he had been desperately trying to escape from bandits, but since meeting the villagers, he has felt truly happy. Listens thoughtfully, revealing that whenever she sees him, she is reminded of her only son. She explains that her son, Kanata, is about the same age, and she often worries if he is doing well at school. Lega offers a reassuring smile, certain that her son must be fine. Mesa's husband called for her to join him for lunch. She thanks Liga for his concern and departs. Once alone, Liga's friendly facade crumbles. He shudders as the spectral image of a monstrous demon looms over him, a whispered voice branding him as worthless in the eyes of God. Twists into a vicious grin as he anticipates the full recovery of his mana by nightfall. A memory of being bloodied and broken flashes in his mind, and he silently seethes, blaming a woman named Shrusa for being stuck recovering in such a disgusting place. Eyes now glowing with malice, scanned a village. He dismisses Maze's husband as a filthy creature with too little mana to even be a snack, deciding his death is of no consequence. His gaze unsettles on Maze and the others. He decides that to start the night, he will eat, destroy, and kill everything. That evening, the unsuspecting villagers gather around tables laden with food. They raise their cups in a toast, cheerfully congratulating Lega on his recovery and declaring his celebration. As the villagers mockingly call humans idiots, an old man shouts for Lega to be quiet, but it is too late. A sickening crack echoes as Lega's body begins to violently contort and transform. Transformation completes, revealing a towering horned demon. The villagers stare in abject terror, one crying out about a broken ceasefire. Lega lets out a guttural roar, confirming their worst fears, and announcing that despite their idiocy, they're all going to be his dinner. Surveys the fleeing villagers, deciding who to devour first, but his meal is interrupted. A woman, Meza, stands defiantly with a farming hoe, telling the children to run while she buys them time. Her husband rushes forward, placing himself between her and the demon, challenging the monster to fight him instead. The demon scoffs, wondering aloud how many seconds the man will last. The demon dismisses the challenge with a contemptuous backhand, sending the man flying. He taunts Mesa, asking if she's glad to remember her son, Kanata, now that her husband is dying a useless death. On the ground, defeated, the man can only apologize to his son for his weakness. The attack is cut short, as a foot clad in a high-heeled boot slams into his jaw. A dark-haired woman with horns lands gracefully, expressing her relief at arriving just in time, remarking that her information was accurate. Stumbles back, his eyes wide with disbelief. He recognizes the newcomer, identifying her with shock as a succubus, demands to know how she appeared without him sensing her, only to see she is carrying the unconscious body of a young man, Kanata. A voice explains that she simply copied his mannequin's sealing skill. Legas's shock turns to rage as he screams her name, Shrusa. Two demons face each other across the clearing. Liga sneers, calling her the insignificant demon Shrusa. She calmly confirms her identity. Shrusa then addresses Lega directly, stating that based on what he said to the human woman, she is going to make an assumption. Turns fully towards him, her demonic power flaring as her long hair whips around her. Her voice is low and menacing as she speaks his name. Her face contorts into a mask of pure fury. With one eye wide and the other narrowed in a snarl, she roars the accusation. He tried to kill Kanata's parents. The declaration hangs in the air. Shrusa, panting with rage, declares his actions unforgivable and vows to kill him. Mezzo watches the two demons bewildered by the turn of events. The Demon King has begun her rampage.